Chris Berman. Join me and Ray Knight as Jason Giambi and the Oakland Athletics take on Bernie Williams and the world champion New York Yankees. Coming up next on Wednesday Night Baseball. Welcome to one of the most famous sporting venues in all the world, the Yankee Stadium, the Ball Yard in the Bronx, as the world champion New York Yankees host the Oakland A's. Two teams right now steamrolling toward the postseason. The Yankees in the AL East have now opened up a 4.5-game lead over both the Red Sox and Blue Jays. The A's do trail the Mariners by 5 out west, but they lead the Indians in the wild card chase right now by 2.5 games. Hello once again, everybody. I'm Chris Berman. It's what you would want in an August baseball setting. Yankee Stadium, hot, humid, and perhaps two teams that are dreaming of October baseball. And if they meet in the first round of the playoffs, which they could, they put on a show like we saw last night, bring it on. 3-2 Oakland, bottom 9. All-star Jason Isringhausen, first batter, he faces Bernie Williams. Back, tied at 3. 90 seconds later on the very next pitch, gone! David Chief Justice to right center, pulls it, and the Yankees win it 4-3. Justice, one of the many pickups that Brian Cashman and the New York Yankees have acquired since late June. The latest, of course, being, and most heralded being, Jose Canseco. Justice contributing in a big, big way. Always a big pickup is my buddy and my partner, Ray Knight. And Ray is, we look at that last night, it was exciting. The Yankees making all these moves are telling you, well, we know we don't have the team that won 125 games 2 years ago, but these moves with veteran players. Do you like what they've done overall, all the changes?
Well, absolutely. They've improved in every position. They've added right-handed bats, left-handed bats, although a lot of people around here think they've added so many offensive bats they're not going to be able to get them in the lineup at the same time. But nonetheless, the key addition is David Justice. With this ball club, he has just exploded. 9 home runs in 32 games. He has been an impact player wherever he's been, Cleveland, Atlanta, and here. He's a guy that has really responded. They need somebody as they were really wallowing around that 500 mark. He ignited this ball club. Has been a huge addition.
One of the most fun teams to watch in baseball this year or any other year are these Oakland A's. It's like there's a keg at every base. They hit, they stop, they take a drink, they keep going. And really the guy that epitomizes the way they play, the way they hit, and the way they just approach life is Jason Giambi, the all-star who is close to 100 RBIs already. And he and the A's are having a ball out there.
But you're excited, too, about being here. Jason Giambi is the undisputed leader of this ball club. In the clubhouse, on the field, he sets the stage. He's got that swagger about him. He's got that tremendous power to right field. Unbelievably, has not hit a home run in his career here at Yankee Stadium. Also, when you look at this ball club, there's 5 players that are 25 years old or younger. He's a guy with a little bit of maturity. Only he's just 29 years old. He shows his team the way to play.
It'll be interesting to see how these young A's of Art Howe respond to, I don't want to call it devastating loss in the early going of August, but a young team and a young closer like Isringhausen, who we will see tonight in the same situation, see if they're a little bit, quote, baseball hungover from last night's stunning loss. Young center fielder they called up after the season began has done a great job, Terrence Long. One of the veterans, former Yankee Randy Velarde, is at second base. There's Giambi hitting in the 3-hole. Adam Hyatt, a guy who lit up and won the Triple Crown in the Texas League, is in right field hitting cleanup. Miguel Tejada come, Tejada fall, the best shortstop you've never heard of because he plays in the shadows of all the great ones in the AL, hits 5th. Ben Grieve, rookie of the year a couple of years ago, hit 6th. Mike Stanley, released by Boston, veteran bat against lefties for Art Howe, hitting 7th. Eric Chavez, inside the park home run here last night, hitting 8th. And Sal Fasano hitting 9th, the catcher against the lanky lefty for the New York Yankees, and a man that is one of the biggest winners over the last 4+ years, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Andy Pettitte.
Yeah, 27 years old, again putting up those great numbers, 12 and 6, 4.40. He's got a sinking fastball, a cutter he likes to throw in on right-handers, and a changeup. Big curveball there, 143 hits and 131 innings. Not as dominant this year. In fact, early in the year, struggled of late has been nails, throwing a lot of pitches for strikes, getting a lot of those right-handed hitters to get jammed, getting left-handers to swing at that big curveball. Defense for the Yankees, you look at Dave Justice in left field. That was a big problem for him 2 months ago, especially when Shane Spencer went down. Not a problem anymore. Tremendous firepower there. Williams O'Neill, as always, in the outfield with Brocious, Jeter, Soho, and Martinez. Soho coming in and picking him up, being reunited with his Yankee teammates as Chuck Knobloch finally goes on the DL with problems with his nerve in his elbow.
We're mic'd up and ready to go, partner. Good to see you. I've missed you, Ray.
I missed you, Chris.
I missed doing these games. They're 3 championship rings for those teams, 96, 98, 99. They welcomed him back with open arms. Luis Soho, and Vizcaino's been playing almost every day at second base, so now he gets a rest. Soho was in playing second for the second straight night. Middle game of a 3-game series. Teams, and Terrence Long looks at strike 1 from Andy Pettitte. Long came over from the Mets organization in the Kenny Rogers trade last July. So Pettitte quickly ahead 0-2. I started to say with Andy, and this isn't news, but if you add up the wins from 96 to 99, okay, 69 wins for Andy Pettitte. It's tied for third most. The most in that span, Pedro with 72, Greg Maddux with 71, Pettitte with 69, Kevin Brown also with 69. So talk about production and getting on top of a hitter the first batter he faces. That's what Pettitte's done tonight. Some of his starts, Ray, this year, he's not been on, but sometimes he gets in a groove, and he's been the pitcher that, you know, he's won a lot of money games for this ball club in postseason.
Well, he likes the baseball, and Joe Torre loves him. Andy Pettitte fell in love with that cutter, that little fastball that he throws off of his sinking fastball. He grips it, cuts the ball in on the right-handed hitters. He fell in love with that. Talking to Mel Stottlemyre earlier, now with Tony Cloutinger and Billy O'Connor, their roving pitching instructor, said they got him away from that cutter, let him use more of those sinkers and big curveballs, as you see right there, and now that cutter's been much more effective.
This is Randy Velarde, who was a Yankee through 95. Pettitte was up a bit, but Andy's really first big year with the Yankees was 96. So they were teammates for a little bit. But Velarde was with the Yankees as they got good. As they made the postseason. They lost in that memorable playoff to Seattle, 3-2. Velarde was here, but then he went off to California/Anaheim. And he was acquired by Oakland at the trading deadline last July, along with Omar Olivares, who's on the DL with some young players. Played with the Yankees as far back as 87, right? Center field, Bernie Williams, 2 out. So that brings up the young man that we talked about in the beginning, Jason Giambi, all-star this year. We gave him a camera, not you and I, but gave him a camera, told him to fire away. We ran some of his footage in the home run derby, ran some, and also he said, hey, some of that stuff came out pretty good, huh? It was a lot of fun. He was, you talk about a kid in the candy store in the all-star locker room, but someone who certainly earned it. Ray, 123 RBIs last year, 110 the year before that. Right now, he's close to 100. He's got 95. And as one of our ace Statman Crothers himself, Peter Pasquarelli, points out, since the All-Star game last year, he's driven in about 170 runs. Yikes.
Wow.
But at Yankee Stadium, not so good.
Oh, he has struggled at Yankee Stadium. You see 239, and unbelievably, no home runs there in 25 games. That's right at 100 at bats. This guy's a dead pull hitter.
Good pitch on the inside corner. Strike, says Doug Eddings, the home plate umpire.
Well, this is a great pitch for Pettitte. Look at it, he just buries that ball inside there. Not any sink. A lot of times he sinks the ball to right-handers, cuts it to right-handers, and he goes with that four-seam fastball in on left-handers and falls with big hooks.
It was a hook.
Pretty good pitch.
Yeah. but a little inside of where that inside strike 2 was. Giambi West Covina, California. Fouls it off.
Yeah, Chris, he has a perfect makeup for a baseball player. He's fun-loving, in the clubhouse, always doing pranks, just having fun. I mean, every time I've ever been around him, he's always having fun. But once that game starts, he locks in, boy, and he is all business. You see him right there. You'll see how his concentration is so supreme. You see him when he's away from the ballpark. He's just fun-loving and happy-go-lucky.
That was inside. I would say this early on. And everybody has their favorite teams, and we were talking about how much we enjoy coming to see the Yankees because of so many professionals on this team, starting with the manager, of course, Joe Torre. But for Oakland, if I think of just, hey, we're going to the park, who's playing? It's Oakland. You know, you have to go back to the 93 Phillies, I think, to find like a team that you just, you know what, I don't really like them, but they're like a fun ball club. I mean, they're the same way. They don't have quite as many characters as they do. That ball's hit well. Bernie Williams cannot get it. One hopper off the wall. And Jambi is in with a 2-out, 2-strike double. That was hit awfully well, Ray.
And I think the pitching chart is to keep the ball in on him. Jason hits everything down and in extremely well. You've got to keep the ball in on his hands and off the plate. That ball a little bit out over the plate allowed him to extend. But he's one of those guys that has that real short stroke that basically covers the third of the plate away all the way to the inside corner. And teams try to jam him, but when they miss him there, he hammers the ball out there like that.
This is Adam Pettitte. Admittedly, a young kid, 24-year-old rookie, young man from Chicago, hitting cleanup, playing right field, which he doesn't play that much. In Yankee Stadium, it's a tough spot, but Art Howe doesn't have a lot. I mean, he's got a lefty-laden lineup, so someone with power from the right side against a left-hand pitcher. That's where Oakland. That's why they got Mike Stanton. I mean, that's exactly what they did. But against lefties, look at the difference. So he's hitting cleanup tonight. Now, this young man won the first Triple Crown in the Texas League in 72 years. That's Double-A at Midland last year. 39 homers, 135 RBIs, 345. I know Double-A is not the majors, but
still, if you can take the same approach from Double-A to the big leagues and get good balls to hit, it's easier to hit in the big leagues. You have a lot of young pitchers in Double-A that are wild without throwing a lot of strikes, wild out of the strike zone, throwing 95, 96 miles an hour. You get up here, if you can be patient, you can be a better hitter in the big leagues.
He did go 2-2.
I actually improved my stats. I never hit 300 in the minor leagues. I hit 300 3 times in the big leagues, and my highest average in the minor leagues was 295. But the lighting is so much better in the big leagues. You see the ball better. The umpires, are more consistent. The pitchers throw the ball around the plate if you don't chase. Now, if you chase and they find something you're vulnerable with.
Rip Scott Brocious. Long throw to Tino Martinez. Pettitte is out. So are the A's. Jambi stranded at second base. We head to the bottom of the first in New York. No score. Bottom of the first inning. Nothing doing for Oakland, and now it's the Yankees trying to keep the momentum they built up in the bottom of the ninth last night. Luis Polonia will be the DH. They got, Canseco and Glenn Allen Hill. It's, what, 400, 500 pounds of DH there, and they're going to go with the 100-pound Polonia. Derek Jeter, his last 45, 50 at-bats has really been struggling. He hit second. He can get out of it in a hurry, though, of course. Paul O'Neill in the right field. Bernie Williams, one of the heroes last night in center field. The other hero, David Justice, in left field. Tino Martinez at first. Jorge Posada, the all-star catcher. One-time Oakland A, third baseman Scott Brocious hitting 8th. And one-time Yankee, newly required Yankee, Luis Sojo in the rain, playing second base and hitting 9th. Very popular here in the clubhouse. They'll go against the guy that they have seen for quite a while. Came over from Kansas City last year. One of the few guys in Oakland, Ray, that's above 30. Kevin Going Apier.
Yeah, and he's always had great stuff. The last couple of years after shoulder surgery, only a year and a half removed from major shoulder surgery. He throws now in the upper 90s as opposed to the mid 90s. Slider has that devastating split, but he has to be able to establish that fastball in order to make that split effective. Defense for the A's. 97 errors, second most in the league, and Artie Howell talked about that prior to the game, saying that if they had caught the ball, they would probably be in first place because their offense has been so good. Second in the league in home runs, second in the league in base on balls. Next to last in batting average. They produce a lot of runs without a lot of hits, but mostly home runs and base on balls.
Now, a lot of times, Ray, we take these statistics of, a lifetime against somebody. He's hitting .667. Well, what is it? He's 2 for 3, or he's a Luis Polonia against Kevin Apier, 20 for 57. I would say that's a trend.
Yeah, that's
a lot of at-bats. And make it 21 for 58. So that 351 average has just climbed up lifetime against Apier a little bit better.
That's a good point you make there, Chris. A lot of times you make defensive charts. In fact, every manager has defensive charts on the oppositional player, and we don't even count them until you have at least 50 at-bats. Here, it's just a fastball down. Maybe that was that little splitter. It looked like it went down late. Polonia hit the ball hard. Velarde makes a good lunge for the ball, but a good 2-3 feet out of his reach.
So Polonia is on, and I think what you're going to see in the DH spot and the left field spot were the two positions, and we could talk about this, that Joe will have to deal with in August and September and hopefully October for the Yankees' sake as Derek Jeter comes up, is matchups. I think a lot of it will be who matches up better against someone, and obviously Polonia against Apier, you're seeing it right there, and he responded with a base hit.
Well, there's no question that Joe Torre is a matchup manager. Remember when he had Chili Davis and Strawberry and Raines in left field, or to play left field, he would alternate them, and then Chad Curtis in the World Series got to play a lot and was a big hero in the World Series.
And Spencer. Yeah.
And Shane Spencer.
Well, that's, I think, what you're going to see with what appears to be an overabundance of left field / DHs, although David Justice is going to play as much as he can.
Yeah, he'll either be the left fielder or the DH.
Ground ball to Tejada, bobbles. He's got a gun, but it's not going to be good enough. So there's that defense you talked about, Ray. Now, I don't know if they're going to turn 2 on that, but maybe he, knowing that, maybe he tried to make the throw to second before he had the ball, maybe?
Well, what he did there, most shortstops backhand that ball. Tejada probably has the best lateral range in the American League. He gets in front of a lot of balls, circles a lot of balls. Right there you see him say, my fault. That definitely was not a double play ball with the speed of Derek Jeter. But just watch Tejada. Even though he made a mistake on that ball, he is one of the top 4 shortstops in the league. You're looking at one of them right there in Jeter. Obviously Rodriguez and Garcia Parra, but Tejada fast approaching that elite trifecta.
Well, but he may never get in an all-star game.
Oh, he may not.
I mean, now
right.
Vince Kell did a couple times because Omar was hitting over 300. And
because their manager picked it.
Well, yeah. Well, maybe Artie needs to pick it. I mean, he's the... You know what? You could start as Paul O'Neill steps up. I'll finish this here in a minute because the Yankees have 2 on with Polonia at second and Jeter at first. And that was a 52-footer.
Yeah, that's that splitter, Chris, just set it up right here. Apier was a devastating strikeout pitcher when he threw fastballs 95 in the splitter. Here's a splitter right here. You'll see it coming. It just ends up short. The base hit Polonia hit was a splitter. The ball that was hit to the shortstop was a splitter. He has to establish the fastball first, then go to the splitter.
Well, you think about what happened in the bottom of the night. I know momentum is always only as good as tomorrow's pitcher, starting pitcher. But if the Yankees hung a 2 or 3 spot here on Oakland, a young team, it might be tough for them to get off the mat. Ooh, it's down the line, but that's going to be foul.
Well, I think that the great teams, or even the good young teams, it's just a test day in and day out because they get knocked down. They got beat 13-0 earlier on last week. Sunday, actually. And they're a ball club that has shown tremendous resilience this year, and that is surprising in that earlier in the season, their pitching staff was not real sharp, and they don't hit a lot for average. But all of a sudden, there's young players like Tejada and Chavez at third, just 21 years old, 24 years old, Tejada. They're beginning to respond to situations. Look at Zito last night. I heard just buzzes all throughout the park today from scouts about Zito being one of the best left-handers to come along since Jim Cott. And that's quite a good left-hander. Great changeup, big 6'5" body.
And you know who was one of the guys buzzing about him? Jim Cott, right? 2-1, big pitch to O'Neill. Went fishing on a ball low and perhaps a little away.
Yeah, and that was that splitter there. Right out, he threw him the fastball away, 2-1, 2-0, fastball away. Made Paul quicken a little bit because he shot it down the left field line, and then when you quicken, that makes you susceptible to the changeup in the splitter. He went with a splitter there, 2-2. I would not be surprised to see him come back with a fastball in on Paul O'Neill's hands. Paul loves the ball out over the plate, likes to shoot the ball to left field with 2 strikes.
And Sal Fasano going to go out and talk to his veteran pitcher, Kevin Appier. Originally, it was going to be the other young left-hander, Mark Mulder, to pitch tonight, following Barry Zito. I asked Art about it, and he said, well, I made up my mind a day ago. This is the way the schedule works. This is the last chance I had to move Appier up and separate the 2 rookie lefties in my rotation, perhaps till the end of the season. So I had to take that opportunity, not only go lefty-righty, but lefty, then veteran, then another youngster. So that's what the change is. Mulder will pitch tomorrow against David Cole. Tejada, oh, look at that flip to Velarde, and look at that 12 to first.
Unbelievable,
My goodness. Well, they make a lot of errors, but boy, they make you applaud as well, don't they?
Well, you don't see this play from a shortstop flipping the ball backhanded. Look at this. He doesn't even turn around. That's a tremendous play. I've seen Joe Morgan do that time in and time out where he kind of inverts his thumb down and flips it. But watch this play. I mean, he didn't even look. Knows where second base is and throws that ball from about 30 feet backhanded. Tremendous play right there by Miguel Tejada.
Hey, I also, Velarde did the old jump pass. He got a lot of mustard on that throw, jumping away from first base, too. I mean, that was, talk about inner infielders.
That was sweet.
That was great. That was great. We love the Oakland A's. So Bernie Williams comes up now with 2 down. Polonia is at third.
I have never seen that play made that way. I have never seen.
I mean, never. What, the back?
I have never seen a shortstop go to his right and flip the ball toward the outfield side.
Oh, usually see it as he's making the play behind the back.
Absolutely.
Right.
But to a ball to the shortstop's right, where he is planting his feet, generally gives that underhand throw off the right plant. And I've not seen it that way.
Well, he lived up to his nickname there because, of course, he made the error to put the guy on. And he gets used to them. Tejada they come, Tejada they fall. Now, this is June 21st. This is Velarde to Tejada. Oh, so they got something going there, huh?
Definitely.
Oh, well, that's good. Against Baltimore.
You gotta like it. You see that enthusiasm. There's nothing like it. They play the game like they're still in high school.
Good producing by Jay Veal Cutlow. He went against the grain, ate octopus last night, I think. Sturgeon. Usually Veal Cutlow we had. Give up the meal money here at ESPN. Yeah, right.
If he's eating octopus, we're going to have to sit down and have a serious talk with him.
Great job in there. Boy, so those guys, so they've been doing this all year, huh?
All year long.
Well, I mean, plays like that.
And you see the reaction to that, the enthusiasm, the fun, the joy. That's why I enjoy watching them play.
And, you know, Randy, who the count now is 3-1 to Bernie Williams. Randy Velarde hit 37, but he's got a young approach. Velarde always has a lot of zip in his. I could see how he could fit right in with guys 15 years his junior, don't you? I mean, he kind of played.
Well, he has
younger,
a live body, yeah. And you look at those guns there. He's always been a a physical fitness nut, and I read an article this week that he was in the best condition he's been in 10 years, body fat wise, and because they measure you with that little pinching tool, and you look at him, he's put together. He doesn't look like he's 37.
Meanwhile, Williams walks, and runners at the corners for David Justice, last night's hero. And Bernie said, you know, he was still coming back to the dugout, shaking hands, looking for a seat. He never saw Justice swing the bat. He heard the crowd. He wheeled his neck around. He was still like on the dugout step, and he kind of saw a white blur leaving. So I didn't even get to sit down, and we won the game. David Justice, 9 homers, as you pointed out, Ray, since he's come to the Yankees. And by the way, the Yankees record with Justice, 23-13. Now, it's interesting to note that because since May the 9th, they're a game below 500 overall. But since Justice, they're 10 above 500. So,
well, they were really floundering, and everybody started talking about Chili Davis because Davis was in that 5-hole last year.
To Velarde. And an intriguing bottom of the first for Miguel Tejada. He's got the smile, and the Yankees have a goose egg. No score. Peter and Nomar and A-Rod in the American League. No one's heard of him, and Tejada's going to have a tough time ever being an all-star. Speaking of A-Rod, the first-place Mariners and the first-place White Sox from Comiskey. You can put it on the board at 8 Eastern, so that's coming up in about 20-25 minutes on ESPN 2. So you can switch back and forth, check us out, and check them out. And don't leave us, though. Don't leave us. Don't do that. 20 home runs, by the way. See, 20 homers, 80 RBIs, and no one knows this. Nobody. Last year, Tejada, 21 home runs with 84 RBIs. So, as impressive as he was last year, he's about to eclipse those marks in the middle of August.
Well, he's really put together, too, as are most of the shortstops now in Major League Baseball. They used to be
right center field. O'Neill waves Bernie Williams off, 1 out.
5'10", 165 pounds. Now you look at all these shortstops, and they're anywhere from 6'4", 220 down to Tejada, 6'1", 200. He's listed as 190, but you saw him down there on the field today. He's almost as tall as I am. I'm 6'2½". Look at Jeter. He's 6'3", right at 190. And you're talking about solid guys that used to be third basemen are now playing shortstop.
Ben Grieve to right center. This time Williams says to O'Neill, let me handle it. You got one, I want one. So another pitch, another out, and Grieve is gone. Rookie of the year a couple of years ago. So now that'll bring up one of the new Oakland A's and a one-time Yankee, Mike Stanley. Stanley released last month unceremoniously by Boston. Oakland in dire need of some right-handed pop. Now, I don't think Mike has the pop. I mean, you saw by the numbers, he doesn't have the pop that maybe he did even a year ago, not to mention 2 years ago. However, you know, they can catch some lightning in a bottle. He's a veteran that is a great clubhouse guy. He's been through the pennant wars. And so maybe on a veteran team, you don't make that move, but with all the youngsters, maybe it's a double plus for Oakland. They're hoping it works out that way, with Billy Beane, the general manager. Yeah, Billy Beane operating on a $25 million payroll. Mike Stanley not making nearly the money as, say, a guy like Jose Canseco. You wonder why Canseco may not have gone back to Oakland. It's just a simple economic deal. Billy Beane putting together this fine young ball club with limited dollars. And what did you say that Yankees payroll is? Yankees payroll right now is $112.6 million. Okay. The Oakland payroll is 1-2 pitch to Stanley. The Oakland payroll realistically is $25 million. It is $32 million, but with Olivares on the DL and Jaha on the DL, that's $7 million of the $32 million is not here. So they got $25 million sitting on the bench, and the Yankees have $112 million. So, you know, all the more impressive what the Oakland A's have done. Hats off to them and manager Art Howe, general manager Billy Beane, and the organization working not with the same deck of cards that teams like the Yankees are working with, but yet if the playoffs were to start right now, well, you know what, Oakland, if they were to start today, I think it would be Oakland and the White Sox is the way it would work out. But let's not worry about it. We got 6 weeks to go, and Stanley earns a walk. The wild card standings, Oakland lost that devastating loss last night, but Cleveland had their 6-game winning streak snapped by Texas. So it's 2.5 over the Indians, 3.5 over the Angels, another team in the West that's hanging around. And now Boston and Toronto now without Mondesi for the rest of the year, and that's obviously a huge blow. Boston with a rare loss from Pedro last night, despite a 3-hitter. This wild card race is going to be very interesting, especially depending on how Cleveland fits in. Eric Chavez had an inside-the-park home run last night. It's almost shades of, you never see that before, right? It's almost shades of the old Yankee Stadium when center field was 463. So if you hit it off the wall there, of course you had a chance to get an inside-the-park home run. But caromed off the center field wall. By the time Bernie could get to it, he made a run for the ball. And by the time he could get to it, Chavez was flying. It was a 2-run. Is there a more exciting play than that, inside-the-park homer?
There's not. You don't see it very often. That's one of the reasons it's so exciting. And you look at this Chavez, he's a guy that has all those tools. He can run. He has power. He's an excellent third baseman. He's made a few throwing errors this year, but Chris, he really has nice range, real soft hands, and they're crazy about this guy. They've also got Ryan Christensen, talking about Pettitte. All these guys, 23, 24 years old.
Well, he's a #1 pick, Ray, at 96 of the A's. Grieve, a #1 pick in 94. And they got several #1 picks that are contributing to this ball club. There's Christensen right there we were talking about. He's not a #1, I don't believe it. But there's 2, and I'm omitting 1. So high draft picks. Is Christensen #1? I don't think so. But the thing is, there are a lot of high draft picks here.
He was actually a 10th round selection.
Okay. 2-2 pitch to Chavez. Chavez chops it foul. Now, here's last night. Now, you just don't ever see this. Not with the little parks. This is
watch
last
right
night.
here how he starts immediately running out of the box. He thought the ball was gone, but he ran out of the box. The ball hits off of that back part of there. Now he's thinking it's a home run. Nobody really chased it. I think what happened, Chris, I saw this replay. I believe that Bernie thought the ball hit the black wall and bounced back in. The umpires didn't see it that way. I think one of the reasons why is you say Chavez casually running around the bases there. He did run out of the batter's box very hard, but there's that black wall back there behind the 408. It's very tough for umpires to see that ball, carry them off of that. The only thing is that is made out of concrete, painted black. When a ball hits that thing, it bounds back into the field about 30 or 40 feet. That blue area you see out there is just padding. The ball hits that, and it just thuds right there on the warning track.
Hit right on the top. That angle, 2 inches different, it would have not have carried him like that. Base hit. So Oakland with a 2-out walk to Stanley, and now a single by Chavez up the middle. They have something going here in the second with the #9 hitter, catcher Sal Fasano coming to the plate. Fasano had a 2-home-run game recently against the Red Sox, one of them being a grand slam out in Oakland. But they don't get a lot of offensive production from their catching duo of Ramon Hernandez, Sal Fasano. I mean, here's a catcher with the below the proverbial Mendoza line at 198. Kansas City last couple of years up and down from Kansas City to AAA Omaha. Even in AAA last year he had 275, Ray, with 21 homers. So there's some pop every now and then, as the Red Sox found out, just not a lot yet.
Well, catcher's #1 job is to run that pitching staff, and it's just an added bonus when you have a catcher that's good defensively that can drive in runs and hit for power. That shows you how important Pudge Rodriguez and Javi Lopez are. Guys that handle a pitching staff and still are able to drive in a lot of runs.
Yeah. Ramon Hernandez caught last night. Now I'm looking at Asano at the plate. He's also looking at an 0-2 pitch. You know what I like, too, about these A's? Talk about a club that was fun and great at the same time. The early 70s A's that won the 3 back-to-back-to-back world championships. This guy, now he looks, you know, Sal Bando-esque. You know, I don't know, you know, with the, well, Sal wouldn't be here, but a lot of guys had the facial hair on those teams. Gene Tennis.
Raleigh Fingers, Rudy.
Right? You know, they had all the chops and everything, but it's more of a 90s and early 21st century thing, but maybe they're turning back the pages to the, and the Oakland's had some great baseball history, obviously. When you talk about a club you don't talk about that often in all Yankee history, the Red Sox, the Cardinals, Dodgers, Giants. Think about those teams in the 70s. The little rise they had under Billy Martin in the early 80s, right, with the pitching staff, that they all threw 8 million innings, right? And then, of course, the team with La Russa, which Jose Canseco was a big part of, won 1 world championship, but they were winning division titles all the time. It's a pretty good baseball for over the last 30 years, wouldn't you say? Brocious, a guy who played for those A's in the early 90s, makes the catch. He remembers Pettitte wriggles free, bottom of the second coming. History of the A's, some great history between the Yankees and A's. Billy Martin, of course, beloved here. The late Billy Martin managed the A's in '81, and Reggie, of course, broke in as an Oakland A and hit all those home runs, and no one will ever forget those 3 homers in the World Series. The late Catfish Hunter, pitching for those 3-time championship A's and then 2-time championship Yankees, and stolen base king Ricky Henderson, been an A, what, 4 times, a Yankee 2 or 3 times, and the latest, Bash brother, now pinstriper, Jose Canseco. Pinch hit last night. He's going to start tomorrow. He's going to DH tomorrow against the lefty Mulder. So that'll be his first start. And as Martin and Reggie, his Yankee numbers retired, but certainly Reggie made his mark with all those home runs, and the home run at Tiger Stadium and the All-Star game we're still talking about. Hey, how about a guy who hit home runs the way he did now? You know, I looked up some of Jose's numbers in the years that he had like 31 and 35. But that was before everything was whatever it was, right? Juiced. I mean, he was juicing the balls. But I mean, what would he hit, the Jose Canseco of the late 80s? What would he be hitting now? He'd be right up there with McGuire.
He would be right there with McGuire, 60, 65 home runs.
Wouldn't he?
And I still think if he could stay healthy, he'd threaten that.
Tino Martinez, long run for Tejada, and left fielder Grieve, and it's Grieve that makes the play. There's 1 out. But, you know, Jose, 440 lifetime home runs. 9 this year. And here's a guy that knows a little something about pitching. Jose, they had some great battles. Red Sox and Clemens and Canseco in the 88 playoffs, 90 playoffs. But Canseco is, you know, he's 24th on the all-time home run list with 440. I mean, I don't know that he's going to get to 500 with the way it's going to work.
Well, he was talking early in the year that he was going to play another 4 or 5 years, and now, you know, you could see that happening with the Devil Rays, but in this ball club, with this ball club, you know, you can't see him being a Yankee for 4 or 5 years.
No. It was funny. See those pinstripes? Actually, Scott Brooks just told me it was funny yesterday. You know, they have the uniform, although even Brian Cashman, the GM, who I talked to before the game, and this one is slow. Posada sends it back. Gone! He wears the pinstripes pretty well. 1-0 New York. Coming to his own this year, Ray struggled as the starting catcher last year when they pretty much gave him the job for Girardi. But this year, that's his 21st home run. He was an all-star, and deservedly so, and this is He's coming to his own this season.
Well, I think Joe Girardi helped him immensely. Here is another splitter. The ball just hangs there for Posada, and he deposits it out there about 395, 400 feet. But you're right. Influence of Joe Girardi and the patience of manager Joe Torre, along with the tutelage of bench coach Don Zimmer, who's always there encouraging Posada. Become as we mentioned in the last inning, a solid defensive catcher. Struggled last year with his defense. They always knew he was going to hit. This year has come along, calling his game, throwing people out.
Just trying to finish the Brocious Canseco story, then we'll let it go. Scotty said, you know, that the uniform is so huge. Cashman even said, I didn't realize he was this big. He said the pinstripes, unlike the other uniforms, they don't give. So Jose was like putting the thing on, and the legs weren't quite big enough for the thighs, and the shoulders weren't big enough, and the pinstripes weren't. It wasn't just like the other unis. Said he felt terrible in it.
Are you telling me those pinstripes are made out of something other than nylon? Or
well, whatever it is, it prevents the fabric from stretching. I mean, this is more than I really went down to the Medicaid to find out, by the way. Posada stretched his 395 feet, but Jose feels a little better in his uniform tonight. Maybe we'll see him pinch hit. That'll be fun. Brocious gone, and this is Luis Sojo, who you heard a nice ovation just now. Last night got a real nice ovation. These Yankee fans, they pay attention to not only the star players. They know who contributes, and he's got 3 rings to show for it. Just back in trade with Pittsburgh this past week. Pirates to New York. So we'll take it, at least this year.
Yeah, that's quite an upgrade in one season.
Yeah.
Although they penciled him in as a starting player there.
Gets under this. Fasano, plenty of room. Makes the catch. But Posada's long ball has given the Yankees a 1-0 lead through 2. 1-0 Yankees over the A's here. Chris Berman along with Ray Knight at Yankee Stadium. Sunday night, we get a look at the Reds. What a wild win they had the other night over Atlanta. Junior Griffey and the Reds trail by 6 in the Central. They're playing Sammy and the Cubs. Or the Yankees and Anaheim out west on ESPN2. So Sunday Night Baseball, Reds and Cubs, ESPN, and ESPN2 Yankees at Anaheim. So Posada for president. I wonder who he's going to pick for vice president. Those of us from the nutmeg state of Connecticut are excited to have one of our own. Senator Joe Lieberman, a great individual. 2-term senator from my state, going to run with Al Gore, and we're just, you know, Connecticut, one of the original 13 states, we've never had anyone run for president or vice president. So this has, you know, been around as long as the United States. We never had that. Maybe Posada will pick one of us to run for be his vice president. I don't. Moving right along. I always like a presidential year for the Swami, and I'll tell you why, as Terrence Long wins off. For presidential elections, Ray, we make a spread of electoral votes, and then we pick one way or the other. We don't talk about who I would vote for. I make the spread. If someone's favored to win in a landslide, we figure out, well, it's 200 electoral votes, and then we make the pick. Long fly to center, but Bernie Williams has room. So Long hits it long, but it's a long out.
Well, this young man, just 24 years old, has a nice swing. Floats a little bit, but look at that strong extension there. Got jammed a little bit on that. Broke his hands down in toward his body. But he is a guy that potentially is going to be able to hit 20, 25 home runs while playing center field. Great range again in the outfield for the Oakland A's. They have Pettitte at short and Long in center field. Again, Terrence Long, 24. Adam Pettitte, 24. Pettitte, 24. Ben Grieve, 24. Chavez, 22. Then you have Hudson, Zito, that are 25 and 23.
Mulder.
And Mulder is 22.
They're babies.
They're babies.
Mike Stanley, you know, just getting to know his teammates as we watched Randy Velarde, said That's some. I don't know if they're shaving yet. Some of these guys, they're young. And Stanley said this. He said, when I was in Texas in '86, Ben Grieve was our 10-year-old bat boy. He's not my teammate. Charged by Jeter. Oh, that's sweet. Velarde gone, 2 outs. And here's Jason Giambi, who doubled to right center. 2 outs in the first, but was stranded. Giambi played for the U.S. Olympic team in '92. That was the Barcelona team. An all-star this year, as we told you. And how about this? It gets a name in that I haven't thought about in a long time, Ray. His batting average last year was .315, and that's not unbelievable. But yet it was the highest batting average by an A's player, A's lefty, since the Philadelphia A's 1952 Ferris Fane. It's not one of those stats that you think about that often, but not the Oakland A's, not the Kansas City A's, who we remember, but the Philadelphia A's of 1952. You have to go that far back to find a lefty who hit for a higher batting average than Giambi did last year. See, I like to look that stuff up.
Well, talking about looking stuff up, Jason Giambi, since 1996, has improved his RBIs 79, 81, 110, 123.
Pretty well the opposite way. Justice makes the grab on the wall and lays it into the stands. Giambi tries the other way, but Justice was there to serve it. Well, the Yankees, as we're back at Yankee Stadium, 1-0 over the A's, thinking of their pitching coach, Mel Stottlemyre, who started a new round of treatments for his bone marrow cancer. That was expected. That's a regular scheduled treatment. But while he's gone, the roving pitching coach, Billy Connor, is up to he and Tony Cloninger kind of combined doing the pitching coach duties. Luis Polonia pulls the bat back, ball 1. Also a very poignant moment among Joe Torre, general manager Brian Cashman, David Cohn, longtime friend and teammate. Polonia, oh boy, Terrence Long got mixed up on that one, Ray. I mean, it was a tough play, but he looked like he went left when he should have gone right. So here are these A's making errors or not making plays in the field, and that's a lot to ask of the hitters.
When a left-handed hitter hits the ball to the left to second base, it's going to slice. It looks like to me, what's this ball slice? He comes at it, but then he makes a little quick jaunt to the right. Then the ball keeps going left. He misread that ball. I don't know if he lost it in the lights or lost it somewhere in the stands. But he had the right angle starting toward that ball. He made a little quick jab step left, and then the ball just kept moving away from him toward the left field line.
Now, they call it a double, which you have to, I guess. I guess so. Well, but there's an error. But there's an error that doesn't show up in the scorecard.
He played it into a double.
Oh! And Jeter plunked in the backside or in the lower back. That looked like Apier was. It looked like a breaking ball that for some reason he got much more mustard on it than he wanted, rather than a fastball in the inside corner. That's what it looked like to me, Ray.
We're going to see right here what it is. It's actually a fastball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a fastball, and I think probably Kevin Apier is one of those high-energy guys, a guy that takes everything to heart in the game. As center fielder misplays a ball, he gets his temper a little bit ignited, and he comes and tries to throw the ball too hard. When you do that, you lose your velocity. I mean, you don't lose your velocity, you lose your control. I think that's just one of those Kevin Apier reactions to a misplayed ball, and he's done that his whole career.
Oh, yeah.
He gets angry in a hurry.
Oh, yeah. Runners at first and second, and Paul O'Neill is up. 1-0 Posada homer, bottom second. The lone run in the ball game, Jorge's 21st. Let me just finish what I started to say. Joe Torre, Brian Cashman, David Cohn went to Darryl Strawberry in the New York hospital undergoing cancer treatment himself, and today presented Straw with his World Series ring. They want to do it in person to everybody if they can. And today Straw did it 2 days after an operation, and his spirits are very much up, and I know, Ray, you played with Darryl, and everybody feels that they reach out to Darryl in some way, and we wish him the best. And that was quite a moment today. Joe told me about it, presenting him his ring.
Well, that's a sweet gesture. You know, Darryl hasn't done a lot to help himself over the last couple of years, but, you know, we still feel for him as a teammate. You know, I pray for him. I care deeply about him. Mel Stottlemyre, pitching coach when I was with the Mets, such a fine man. And as Joe Torre said before the game, Mel Stottlemyre, one of those guys that is tough enough that he can beat this thing. And this team has been devastated with cancer. Joe Torre's cancer from prostate. Fortunately, we haven't lost anybody, and we continue to hope that with the medicines and the new developments, that almost every day with the, you know, defining the cells. I just saw recently about the melanoma discovery of the cell that causes that. So hopefully we'll get these things under control. And
our thoughts are with both gentlemen, that's for sure. And Darryl has now a ring in his possession, which he was a big part of that last year. Count is 1-2 to Paul O'Neill. Polonia at second. Derek Jeter at first. And I'm saying, you know what, if Ricky Henderson was a Yankee 3 or 4, seems like Polonia's been a Yankee about 19 times, doesn't it, Ray?
Well, he has. The defense swung way around to left field on O'Neill. There you see center fielder long 3 or 4 steps, right field line wide open.
Swinging through it. Foul tip held onto by Fasano. And there's one out.
Well, that's a huge strikeout for Apier. Now it gives him a situation where he can go get one pitch double play, just a fastball running hard away. O'Neill strength is that way. Foul tips it. Look at him go down on that ball, but he can't believe that he misses that pitch. That's a pitch that he says, what are you doing? I don't know what that reaction is.
He's looking at Apier. What are you doing?
Yeah, he's just striking you out there, Paul.
He's talking to himself. Paul, you know, it's a good thing when Paul talks to himself, it's a local call, because he would run up a hell of a phone bill. You know? Bernie Williams up. Walked in the first. Stranded. Bernie with 101 RBIs on August 9th. On 8-9-0-0. August 9th, 2000, he hit 101 RBIs.
Well, he just keeps doing it year in and year out.
Under 15 last year, career high, and trying to see if Polonia was napping. Tejada sneaking in there. He was not.
That play a lot of time is put on by the catcher. He'll split his fingers and put 2 down, and then he'll drop his glove a lot of time, and it's just an I'll be there play. That was not it. That was just a daylight play where the shortstop sits up right behind the runner and just sneaks in there, and the pitcher sees the daylight and turns and whirls and tries to make the play.
Bernie, 0-1. He is second behind Edgar Martinez in RBIs going into the day. Edgar with 107. He and Carlos Delgado at 101. Last Yankee to win an RBI crown was Don Mattingly in 1985.
I remember early in Bernie's career, they said he wasn't going to be able to drive in runs. In 94, 95, 96, he drove in 68, 57, 82.
Oops.
Then all of a sudden...
You fired that scout, didn't you?
They must have fired that boy.
You did.
I fired him, yeah. 96, he drove in 102, 97, 100. Then 98, 97 in just 490 at bats in the big year last year. And obviously this year, going to have a, if he stays healthy, a career RBI year.
2 on for him here if he can deliver. Inside from Apier. 2-1.
Bernie's gotten so much stronger. He started lifting weights. He's quite a artsy guy. He plays musical instruments. He draws classical guitar. But he only hit 12 home runs his first 2 seasons, 12 each season.
Yeah, well, he has 11 postseason home runs, period. So that scouting report has long been filed.
Yes, sir. Burned, trashed.
Goodbye. 3-1, Ray. Justice on deck. What are you throwing?
Kevin Akers' best pitch is a split finger. And I think Bernie Williams' pitch that he likes to hit is a fastball down and in. So I believe he'll probably go to an off-speed pitch, try to make a spit pitch somewhere around the knees, dropping down on top of the plate. I don't believe he'll challenge him with a fastball. A lot of problems with he and Fasano getting these signs together. Looks like a splitter to me if he's going with the last sign. High fastball.
Count now full. Now, I want to ask you this, Ray. At 3-2 and 1 out, the Yankees aren't a running team, yet Polonia and Jeter could move. Pretty good hitter. Do you gamble and send?
I send him here to stay out of a double play. Bernie Williams runs pretty well, but he hits the ball hard. You got to look at the negative side of that, and that's a line drive double play with Justice up. So I don't know that Torrey will send him. Let's see if we can pick out the signs. 2-2, 1-1-3. So we probably, it'll be the second sign.
That's your zip code, isn't it? 2-2-1-1-3. Oh, that throw hit Polonia, and no one can find the ball.
Okay, what that tells me, though, is that 2-2 is just a pickoff play at second. He repeated 2 twice, and that tells him a pickoff play at second. Let's go look again and see what happens. There it is. It is a absolute directive from the catcher. Polonia getting the big lead out there. A good throw would have had him dead. If we can get these signs again, as Tejada playing around out there as he always does. But he went 2-2, 3-3-1, the 2 being the indicator. Now he's going to, actually he went with his thumb away. That should be another, should be a pitch out.
It was something.
It was definitely something.
Now, how do you know all this?
Well, I played for 15
No,
years.
I know that. But
you know, there's not a whole lot you can do out there.
Each team, the signs, those sort of things are basically very similar.
Well, you know, as a base runner, when you look into the catcher, you're looking for a number there. So this is going to be a split finger. That circle is either a sinker. He went back to a sign. He shook him off. But anytime you see something other than a finger, there's some type of play.
There they go. And it's ball four. Now, give me the nod. I've watched baseball for a lot, and I had a feeling not everybody on the Yankees, those 2 runners in particular, might as well move them, right?
Absolutely. But what you're doing there, Chris, in my estimation, is you're protecting against a double play, especially in the middle of your order with David Justice up. You don't necessarily run just because you have speed there to steal bases. You run in order to keep the double play out of order and to allow your big hitter to come up. But what happens also, if you strike out there, in Williams' case,
well, then you would bring him up, and here's the winner last night. Here's last night's winner after Williams homered and Justice. How about the greeting at the plate last night? I know we're all rolling on something. And that was like a big post, you know, when the whole team gathers at the plate to meet you after you've done something. That's got to be unbelievable.
Well, it is. Anytime you do it too late in a ball game, you know, everybody gets excited, 4th, 5th, 6th inning, but it's not the stamp on the game. When you hit those walk-off home runs, that stamps the victory, and everybody seems to go sky high, especially when you're down 2 runs against one of the best closers in the league.
He's only been on the Yankees for 6 weeks. So having all your new teammates out there at home plate, Ray, I mean, you've experienced it probably not that many times. I mean, I'm sure you remember each one of them. When your 24 teammates are standing there, you know, the non-pitchers. At any rate, bases juiced for Justice. And all 3 runners can move. Polonia, Jeter, Williams. Good pitch.
Finish my thought. With runners going there, if the hitter strikes out Williams, now you're going to lose your best hitter, Justice. They're going to walk him. And then you have Martinez. So what a manager generally does, he doesn't want to lose his best hitter in case Williams were to strike out, because that leaves first base open and sets you up for an intentional walk. But as you said, Joe Torre, feeling good about the contact that Williams makes and the speed, chose to do that.
Joe's been doing that since '96. they're running on 2 strikes, and they have done it for the 4.5 years that he's manager, more than any team that I've seen in recent times.
Well,
certainly in an American League team.
And the other thing it does, it creates holes out there because your shortstop has to cover second and your third baseman has to cover third. It creates a lot of holes out there for ground balls to go through for base hits.
2-1, the count to David Justice. Missed. 3-1, nowhere to put him.
Well, this has been Acres' problem his entire career. He's had some great years with Kansas City, especially from 1990 to 96. But when he gets runners in scoring position, he tries to trick people. He doesn't go right at you. And as a result, he ends up getting bases loaded. He has to come in with a pinch and somebody hits a double, and now you put a big crooked number on the board.
Well, he just put a run on the board. So 2 straight walks have brought Polonian in. The base is still loaded for Tino Martinez. It's 2-0 Yankees.
We've noticed not one of his pitches has been on the inside part of the plate other than the pitch that hit Jeter. That was into a right-hander. You've got all these left-handers stacked up, and he has not shown any ability to throw a pitch from middle in. So these hitters should just be looking for the ball out over the plate, something up to drive, especially the runner on third base, to drive in at sacrifice fly. But here's a pitching sequence on that last at bat to Justice. Look at this pitch. Middle down, then down. He comes back trying to go inside, and that was off the plate, and down and away, big to Walken. Actually, he came in one time with a fastball there. That's one pitch out of the last 12 that he's thrown that has been on the inside part of the plate.
It's the pitching coach, Rick Peterson, out on the mound. Home plate umpire, Doug Eddings, to break it up. I don't know if we gave you the umps, so we'll do it now. Charlie Relaford is at first, Mark Carlson at second, Dana DeBoot, the crew chief, is at third. So Peterson, now a veteran pitcher like Apier, who you said was he's lifetime 131 and 102, which is pretty impressive, especially when you consider a lot of those Kansas City teams he pitched for weren't that good. So what's he telling a veteran like this to do here, Ray?
He's telling him to go right at him. You've got a defense behind you that can catch the ball, even though that may not be true statistically. You've got to believe that. Keep digging yourself in a hole. Get ahead of him and then go to your out pitch. You notice Kevin Apier falls off the mound to the first base side. He's a good fielder on balls hit back to his left side, but he falls off the mound with all that big herky-jerky motion that you'll see the whole middle part of the infield is left wide open as he flies off the ball.
Now, to that end, you mentioned that, Ray, Chavez is right at the edge of the grass at third base for the lefty.
Well, I don't know why he's playing that shallow. You'll see
don't
the
either.
Motion here, and he just wails here with that glove, and then he falls way off toward the first base side, even over there ending up on the grass. Chavez has a play at the plate, not with...
Well, there's no play at the plate here. Back. Grand slam for Tino Martinez. Tino's career. This has not been the offensive season that he would like to put together, but maybe this is a jumping point for Tino Martinez. So a ball not caught in center field, a couple of walks, and now there's a fine spot on the board. 4 coming by the grand slam.
Well, I think that's exactly what happened, Chris. The ball in center field got Apier a little bit riled up. He lost his concentration dust. He lost his command.
That was the curtain call. If you're wondering at home, you could probably guess it.
And if you remember the last 3 out of the 4 years that the Yankees won, we talked about their ability to work pitchers deep in the count. And tonight, a great example of that, the double by Polonia on the errant play, on the bad play. Then Jeter getting hit by the pitch, and then 2 walks, 9-pitch and an 8-pitch walk. And then you just can't throw that many pitches under stress without making a mistake.
So all of a sudden a 6-0 lead as Pettitte, who homered in his first at bat, fouls one off. There was no doubt about that. I mean, Johnby gave it a look, but I mean, Pettitte gave it a look out there, but
well, these hitters talk. And what they do is they exchange information. As Paul O'Neill went back to the dugout, I'm sure he said, look, that fastball he's throwing is running hard away. Hard away. Don't swing at it. It ends up off the plate. So what the hitters do, they adjust to look middle in. Anything out away from you, you take, and that leaves those pitches sitting there like a cookie.
And if it's like a cookie, you got to nibble or maybe take a big bite.
You jump on it.
Yeah, you do. No, I haven't nibbled at a cookie since I was about 6.
Yeah, especially if there's more than one kid in the house, you better jump on it.
Yeah, that's right. I do have to look up some statistics because with Tino, this is the first Yankee game personally I've done this year, just the way it's worked. He always hits homers when I do games. He came up to me at the cage. He says, where have you been? I haven't hit anything. I said, here I am. We're here doing the game in Texas next week. I said, so you know what that means? I said, yeah, I'll probably hit a home run. I'm going to have to look that up, Ray. Well, better yet, George Steinbrenner better look that up. That he may need me around to up that payroll to 114 million.
I don't know that the Yankees can pay you as much as we're paying you.
Oh, George, don't worry about it. It's just a consulting fee. Home run consulting fee. He won the home run derby at Cleveland that time. Remember, a couple of years ago, the All-Star game? Pettitte walks. Here's Tino.
Just fastball. Again, right there, right down the middle after all those balls out away from him. Sits on a pitch right where he wants to get it. They're just a short stroke that made a lot of people not forget about Don Mattingly, but certainly appreciate Tino Martinez. And he hasn't had a lot of those these years. You look at Tino's past history with home runs, 28, 44 in 97, 25 and 31, averaging 33 home runs a year. This year,
11.
Just 11.
Well, we haven't done any games.
So how many did you do? 44 and 97?
Well, not all of them, but we did a lot in 97. They were the defending champs, as they are now. It's the way it worked. I don't know why. Here's Scott Brocious. Ground ball. Tejada dove past the ball. And I would say when it's raining, it's pouring. We go to the studio, and here come the judge, Bill Pettitte.
All right, Chris, as DiGiorno takes us to Kansas City, the Blue Jays and the Royals, Toronto 4.5 games behind the Yanks. Dave Martinez on his 4th team this year. Base hit. Alex Gonzalez comes in to score. And Toronto on the road has the early lead by the score of 1-0 in the bottom of the first.
All right, Billy, thank you. Davey Martinez with his 4th. I like Davey. He's
always been a good
winner.
Player. He's a guy that's a tough out.
He ties. Well, Dave Kingman played for 4 teams in 1 year, but I don't think Davey's going to do what Kingman did. Kingman played for 4 teams in 1 year in 4 different divisions and homered for all of them. I got to remember who all the teams were. I think it was the Cubs.
Padres, Yankees.
Cubs, Yankees. Oakland? There's 4 different teams, and I forget what year it was. But he homered for all. But now
it was 77. I know it was 77.
Yes. It was definitely Cubs, Padres, Yankees. And I forget the AL West. Doug Jones, one of the few guys old enough to be shaven for a long time. He just chooses not to. Up in the pen. Of course, he was an all-star closer in years past. He's their middleman now. Here's another guy that has that look. You know, I am having a good time. He's in his 40s now.
Yeah, he's made a career out of throwing the ball 85 miles an hour.
Maybe.
Not a lot of people have been able to do that, but he had a great changeup and a motion that I don't care how much you tried to sit on the ball and wait on it, you just could not wait long enough.
Soho pops it to Fasano, and 2 out. With 2 on, 5 home, and the Yankees have batted around. Luis Poloni started all this with the double on a ball misplay by Terrence Long, so he'll have his second at bat here in the 3rd. Tino finished. Foul pop-ups, by the way, for Soho. They didn't get him to foul up behind the plate. 33 pitches for Appier this inning. Seems like more than that, actually, to be honest with you. When he gets in jams, he doesn't exactly pitch like he's double parked outside the stadium, right?
No, he's never been a pitch efficient guy. He's talking to himself a lot too. He and Paul O'Neill's carrying on a conversation.
Perfect. That'll be foul. Bat of Polonia, who is 2 for 2 tonight in the DH role. So Louis Polonia, not exactly what they invented a DH for. Let's have a skinny little guy that can run. I mean, but yet he's 2 for 2.
Well, you have to have all types in order to make a ball club. And Polonia, a leadoff type, certainly what they need with Chuck Knobloch out, and that's one of the reasons why he's in the lineup tonight, simply because a right-handed pitcher, and they like to have somebody leading off other than Derek Jeter.
Well, I mean, they got Glenn Allen Hill, who is sitting and has done a great job here since coming over from the Cubs. Jose Canseco in his 2nd game in Yankee pinstripes. He will start tomorrow. David Justice, who's pretty much the left fielder, although they could play it around a little bit and give him maybe a rest out there, although he's a pretty good outfielder, underrated. Played center for a couple of games, I think, when Lofton was hurt this year with Cleveland for a game or 2 earlier this year.
Well, you look at all those faces and the names, and they got Denny Nagel, really a number 1 or 2 starter when David Cone was struggling and Mendoza went down with the arm problems, and they needed a left-handed bat, left fielder. They got Justice. They needed right-handed pop. They got Hill. Then they got Canseco. My goodness.
Center field is long. The inning is long, and the inning nets a 5 spot. 4 off the bat of this man. Grand slam for Tino Martinez. And it's changed the complexion of this thing in a hurry. We played 3, 6-0 Yankees. Well, this changes everything. The slam by Tino Martinez, and now the Oakland A's, who lost last night in a heartbreaker on homers by Williams and Justice, now find themselves behind 6-0, and Andy Pettitte cruising along. Tino with his 11th home run of the year. And, you know, Friday night, when the Mariners weren't here and the Yankees beat them Friday night, Oakland was 1 out in the West. Since that time, just a few days later, the Mariners won the next 3 games at Yankee Stadium. They won a doubleheader with the White Sox yesterday. Oakland is now 5 out. And I think, Ray, as we look back at this season, and, you know, you play 162 games, so it's hard to say, well, that was a big game and that was a big game. For 2 of the 3 divisions in this league, in the American League, last night, Seattle had already posted the doubleheader win, and then Oakland was going to win but lost. So they went from 3.5 to 5 last night. The Yankees are trailing. They know Pedro's pitching on the West Coast for Boston. You figure Boston wins. Yet they win the game, and Pedro loses on a 3-hitter. So they, instead of losing a game in the standings, pick up a game in the standings. I think when we look back, August 8th might be a day that goes a long way in perhaps determining the East and the West. It could be. I mean, with that swing of events. Could be. Just circle it on the calendar. So the A's try to chip away, and Scott Brocious can't come up with that one. Adam Pyatt is aboard, and we send it on over to the judge. Billy, what do you have?
Chris, here's what we have as DiGiorno takes us to Chicago, the Mariners and the White Sox. This game on ESPN2. Frank Thomas, a swing and a drive. He's now got 32 home runs. That's just 1 off the league lead. That's a 2-run shot. And the White Sox lead the Mariners 2-0 in the top of the 2nd.
The Big Hurt's enjoying being on a team that's winning, Ray?
Well, there's no question about it. He's such a big part of that. Any ball club that he's on should have a heck of a chance to win. Last year, did not have down the type of year that he had been accustomed to having. He was one of the most vocal people when in 90, I guess it was 97, when they started making all the trades to break down the ball club, acquiring young talent.
Giants trade with Alvarez and Roberto Hernandez being one of them, right? Hit to center by Miguel Tejada, but Williams is there. Pettitte back to first. That scored an error on Brocious, by the way.
Yeah, that ball came up. I read Scotty's lips when we were looking at him. He said, boy, that ball came up, as he turned to Derek Jeter. And, you know, when you play on an infield and you take 40, 50, 60 ground balls every day, by this time of the year, you're around probably 10,000 or so balls. And when a ball's hit, you react to it the way you've seen it come off that turf so many times. Brocious likes to stay down on the ball. That ball jumped up. Scotty a little surprised by the jump on the overspin ground ball.
Ben Grieve, Rookie of the Year 2 years ago, flied out to center his first time up. Breaking ball by Pettitte, in there for a strike. Grieve, we told you that he was the bat boy when Mike Stanley was a member of the Rangers in the late 80s. Grieve was the #1 pick of Oakland back in '94, the 2nd overall pick. His father, Tom Grieve, was the #1 pick of the Washington Senators in 1966. So they're the first father-son #1 pick combo in Major League history. Good genes. And there's Stanley on deck, batting behind the guy that used to give him his bat.
Tom Grieve, a right-handed hitter. Ben Grieve, a left-handed hitter. I guess that came from his mother's side.
Yes. Adam Pettitte, the runner at first, the 24-year-old Grieve, so 24 years of age in his 3rd season. You just look at the difference in the age of the teams. I mean, it is unbelievable. The Yankees, on the other hand, have hardly anyone. I mean, Jeter, of course. Posada, I think, is still 29, but they're an all over 30 team just about, and some way over. Rocket. How about Rocket? Started the game the other night against Kansas City. He was 37. By the time it finished, he was 38. That was that rain delay, and they finished it at 2 in the morning. He started, he was 37. He was done, he was 38. Rocket got off the hook last night, pitched well, gave up 2 home runs to the inside the park, one to Chavez, and the Hernandez, the catcher, got off the hook with the heroics last night. Here's a base hit. Don't tell the A's they don't have a chance. 2 on with 1 out for Mike Stanley. The Yankees are doing what they always do for Andy Pettitte, Ray. Run support, he gets 7 runs a game.
Well, you know, it's pretty easy to be 12-6 when you get that kind of numbers. Pettitte
Apier
with a 4.49, Apier 6.52 runs. That's a lot of runs. I'll tell you what, though, when you look at these stats and see how inflated they are over the last 5 years.
Right.
Man.
If you told Bob Gibson or Sandy Koufax or Juan Marichal or even more, Palm, I mean, we could go down the list. We're going to get you 7 runs a game. You think you can work with that? What would their records have been? I mean,
35-0. 35-0. They would not have lost.
Strike to Stanley.
Tom Seaver used to kid around every start. It's just something he said right before he went out to the mound. He'd always say, "Get me 10 and we'll win." He never needed much more than 2.
Well, if you didn't get any off him in the first, you could take the rest of the day off, right? Chop foul, right wide of the inside of third base coach Ron Washington.
Mike Stanley struggling all year with his timing. Spoke to him before the game, as you did, and just talking about he just has not been able to let the ball get to him. He's been out front on all kind, even the fastball. He jumps way out front on. He's not able to stay back. You can just see him fighting himself down there, trying to keep his weight back. He even almost swung at that one.
86 to 91, the Rangers. Yankees from 92 to 95. Red Sox, 96 and 97. Came back briefly to the Yankees in 97. Toronto, 98. Boston, later in 98. And that timing, there was no timing on that. He's gone.
That's a beautiful pitch there. After getting out in front on a changeup, you bury the fastball in on him because you just know he's sitting there waiting, trying to stay back. Beautiful pitch, beautiful thought. Stanley trying to stay back after getting ahead of that changeup. Sweet pitch.
Well, batting average, forget it. And they're up there in strikeouts. But the A's, they score runs, almost the best in the league. They hit home runs, almost the best in the league. They had 3-run homers. Well, this would be a good time to hit a 3-run homer, and Eric Chavez knows it.
Well, they believe, talking to them around the cage, they believe they're going to score 5 or 6 runs a game. They come out believing that, and they don't feel that they have to just bang the ball to do it. They feel like they can walk. They've got enough. And it's unusual for a club this young to have this much patience. You saw the 3rd in the league in base on balls. This kid right here is one of the guys. He doesn't swing at very many bad balls. The Oakland A's are left-handed dominant club, as we talked about earlier tonight. Artie Howe discussed that a little bit, how they've been really susceptible to left-handed pitching. But most of the pitching in the league is right-handed, so that sets up pretty good for the ball club.
2-1 to Chavez.
This kid is a really mature hitter. I mean, he's hit .271 with 16 home runs and 54 RBIs, but he doesn't swing at close pitches. He's got that leg lift. He gets everything set up on his backside. And it looks like to me he's been around a long time, a guy that his age belies his experience.
Waited on that one, annoyed at himself a little because Pettitte hated the corner. It's 2-2. Last year, Chavez was the opening day starter last year, as he was this year, at third base. Made him the youngest starter on opening day for the A's since Ricky Henderson in 1980.
Well, Andy Pettitte really throwing the spots after getting in trouble with a base hit and an error. Boy, that's nasty. That curveball starting right at that hitter. They bail out. That's how this ball starts right as his back knee. And he lifts that leg up and starts there, then moves right over the inside part of the plate, but actually curved around the plate. Now Pettitte, after going fastball in, curveball away in. He's probably going to go away with a fastball here, or maybe even throwing that changeup 3-2. Runners will be moving.
Hyatt and Grieve aboard. They're off. Left field. Justice. The A's strand 2. We head to the bottom of the 4th. They're in New York. Andy Pettitte of the Yankees working on a big 6-0 lead. All right, Billy. 6-0. Yankees lead the A's here, bottom of the 4th. 5 spot in the 3rd. Tino Martinez with a grand slam earlier. Posada with the solo home run. So Kevin Napier going to try and settle things down, and now he needs to, I guess, eat innings. Day game here tomorrow afternoon. The young Mark Agent Mulder, pitching. He should have a catcher named Scully, actually. But Mulder pitching for Oakland against David Cohn, trying to find himself. David's really scuffling this year. So they go tomorrow afternoon, and then Jeter swinging at the first pitch. It's Chavez across the diamond to Jumpy, and there is 1 out. Preseason rolling, week 2 of the complete preseason, and we've got a game for you Saturday night on ESPN. The Buffalo Bills at the Detroit Lions. Lions and a new running back, James Littleman Stewart. I'll be on with NFL Tonight at 7:30. Tommy Jackson with me. I believe Mike Golick with me. That'll be an hour before the game. We have fun on that show, and then the game. And Will DeSwami picked Buffalo for the 13th straight time. Will I pick Buffalo?
What's
to get to the Super Bowl. Well, they made 4 of them, didn't they? They made 4 of them. Now, let me tell you something. This year, Buffalo, Bruce Smith, Redskins, Andre Reed, Denver Broncos, Thurman Thomas, Dolphins, Jim Kelly's already retired. I'm the last one left from that team.
Oh,
Went to those 4 Super Bowls.
And you're not going anywhere.
I'm the last one left. I gotta pick him, don't I? I gotta. I'm a loyal. You know I'm loyal.
Oh, I know you're loyal.
This one is gonna be foul. Now.
You pick the Giants every year.
Well, that's. Well, how am I doing with that? The San Francisco Giants.
You're doing good this year. Like
that's gonna be a great race down the stretch with San Francisco, Arizona, and LA all playing each other. The baseball swamp and football.
You're all everything.
So that's scary. It's scary. Anyway, we have a game on this Saturday night, the football game between Buffalo and Detroit. It's going to be tough to pick the 49ers, though, for the 20th straight year, though, Ray. I got to tell you that.
Oh, you're not going to pull off with them because Young left. You can't.
Well, they got more problems than just Steve Young leaving.
You're not going to pull off of them, though. No
I
way.
don't think they have much of a chance this year to get to the Super Bowl. Even I'm loyal.
But you're not that big a front runner.
But not a front runner. I'm afraid I'm going to be running from behind. They'll be back at some point. Fly ball to right by O'Neal, and that is handled by Adam Pyatt. 2 out. It's an exciting time, you know, we get heading towards September and football starts. Look at Paul.
Hanging breaking ball there, and Paul knows he should have deposited that ball somewhere, just missed it, popped it up. Never happy with his swing, unless it's a base hit somewhere, and he deposited his helmet right on top of one of our cameras. Lenses.
Helmet cam. That's our new helmet cam for baseball that we're using. Let's see, here it is.
New name for helmet cam. New. Yeah, we can still see you, though. Look through those holes.
Yeah. Be quite a telecast watching it through there, wouldn't it? The Knothole Gang on national TV. Bernie has walked twice tonight, so officially he's yet to come to the plate. But we know that's false. Because we looked at the game through those holes and saw him on walk a couple times. Off the mound. Oh, Tejada! AstroTurf baby's got a shot with the throw. That's tough to right yourself. He's putting on a display, isn't he?
Ron Washington, who used to be a pretty doggone good infielder himself with the Twins and all-around player, tells me that this guy has more range than anybody that he has ever seen. And you look there, he makes that play. No way to throw the fleet Bernie Williams out, but that ball hit right off the center of the mound. He catches the ball in the outfield. After that, the play's pretty much over, but the fact that he's trying to make those plays. Shortstop's diving. You can see why they're so excited about this young man. I haven't seen him play much. You know, you talk about the country not knowing much about the A's. You know, I'm doing baseball tonight 2 or 3 days a week, every couple of weeks, and then games, and I've not seen Tejada play enough to really know what type of player he is. You know, you see film and everything, but until you see a man play in action and hear the ball come off the bat that sharply.
Well, he's athletic. We know that.
They talk about him being a 5'2" player. That's like a Ken Griffey Jr. when you're talking about a 5'2" player, or Alex Rodriguez, meaning that he can hit with power, run, field, and throw. You don't have a lot of those people around.
You have more now, though, than you used to. Much more. You point out at different positions, like short. I mean, you could probably, just using the shortstops in the American League, what kind of team we got?
We got a real special team.
I mean, I don't know who's going to play where, but I mean, I'm not that worried about it.
Hey, it won't matter. It won't matter.
We got A-Rod, we got Jeter, we got Nomar, we got Tejada, we got Vizquel. He could play short for us, by the way. That's where he would play.
Well, I think of
we
all
would
those
play
guys.
Toronto, right? Gonzalez? Right? AL shortstops only. How are we doing? Could we win some games with that squad? What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, talking about with Jeter and Nomar and Rodriguez.
We got 3, 4, 5 hitters. We're done.
3, 4, 5 hitters.
Right?
Lead Tejada off.
There goes Bernie. Fasano's throw is whoa. That's in Staten Island. So yeah, we're seeing what can undo the A's. That's 2 errors for them, and the play long didn't make. We're raving about Tejada's athleticism, but we're watching them not field very well, Ray, overall.
Yeah, well, Kevin Apier's a guy that just not going to hold runners on. He's got that big leg kick. Throws a lot of breaking balls, curveballs, split fingers. Fasano had no chance on that, even though it was an errant throw. He just had no chance. Bernie Williams steal that base almost standing. A lot of people think sitting at home in the 4th inning, 6-0 Yankees lead, why are you stealing a base? Listen, American League, until you're 6-0 in about the 7th inning, you don't shut anything down.
At the game, there's a walk to Justice. They bring up Tino with a big ovation, and he very quickly has a chance to get 7 RBIs in a couple of at-bats.
Well, I don't really know why Artie Howe is staying with Apier after the last inning. I know we're only in the 4th, but he has a whole lot of pitches right now. He's been struggling. Just shows you what happens when you don't have to pinch hit for a pitcher. You're down 6-0 American League. Whole different situation. You can just leave him out there and let him absorb the beating.
Outside the Tino, ball 1. Both teams, well, they play here tomorrow afternoon, a noon start. David Cohn against Mike Mulder, and then both teams fly to the coast. Oakland home to begin a brief homestand, 3 with Detroit, 3 with Cleveland. And the Yankees go to Anaheim to begin a trip out west. Anaheim and Texas. We'll see. It won't be hot at all next Wednesday at Texas. Oh, boy. Ray, how many shirts do I need to bring to that game?
3.
3?
Yeah.
I'm thinking 4.
4?
Yeah.
You know what you need to start doing is what I do. Just wear a T-shirt.
It'd be too easy. Tino with a slam in his last at bat. Looking at a 1-1 pitch from Apier here. Fasano sets up outside.
I look out the bullpen area, and there's nobody out there throwing. Artie Howe was on the phone. I don't know who he was talking to, unless he was talking to Babe out there.
I don't know.
You saw it. Now he's at 81 pitches.
So Doug Jones gets up. Well, go ahead. Oh, but it's going to be foul. I think Blue Moon Odom is on the phone. Someone.
When you're in this type of situation, you want to go to somebody that can get you 3 innings or 4 innings. A long man, usually that's a young guy that is trying to make your starting rotation, your 6th starter, if you will. Certainly not what Jones is. He's a guy that's always been a 1-inning type pitcher. You sure don't want to toast your bullpen this early in a game, especially
day game tomorrow.
Day game tomorrow.
Well, I mean, look, it's all relative, Ray. It's 6-0 in a game. It's
a huge game. I mean, it's a huge game for Oakland, though, and
right.
You know,
it's a game that they're.
And I don't think you can concede the game with their firepower in the 4th inning.
No, but what my point is, it's 6-0 with 2 outs. Now, I know 6 runs is a lot, but any extra base hit by Tino, and that gets it from difficult to nearly impossible.
Well, I agree with you. At this particular point, as a manager, you're looking to stay in this ball game. And you've got to put the pitcher you think out there is your best bet to get this guy out. And obviously, in Art Howe's mind, it's Apier. You can't afford to let this get to be a 7-8 run ball game. You're still in the game 6-0. You've got, another 18 outs.
Fisted him, and That remains at 2-2.
Actually, 15 outs.
Well, we're getting close to 2 hours here, Ray, and we're in the bottom of the 4th. One team has no runs. How we do it? Bernie Williams third, David Justice first. The 2 heroes last night. Tino the hero tonight, thus far. And it's hard to feel. I mean, I'm not trying to say Fasano makes an error or long misplay. It's also hard to field well when it's a minute between pitches, isn't it? Here's a base hit for Tino. Williams scores. Double for Tino Martinez, 7-0 Yankees. Well, the run would have scored despite the throwing error by Fasano, but still changed the complexion of it.
That's a great play. Really nice play. And actually, if you don't cut that ball right there, you've got Tino out by about 10 feet.
And now they will intentionally walk Fasano to get to one-time Oakland A Scott Brocious.
You see, what you do, Chris, when you're sitting on that bench is you have to evaluate your pitcher's stuff. You know what he had going into the game. As he gets deeper in the game, you see what the hitters are doing, how they're reacting to his pitches. As a manager, you turn to your pitching coach, you confer, you decide whether or not this guy still has good stuff or whether or not he's losing it. If he's losing it, you have to make a decision to get him out of the game, or all of a sudden it's going to be 10-0.
Well, he's seen enough. He just pointed out with his left hand, but I guess there's only one guy's warming up, and he's a righty. That's who we'll use. Along came Doug Jones, and the Yankees have a fat lead with the bases full. The Mariners, Billy, took that doubleheader yesterday. Chicago is, boy, they are resilient. He's going to break, although Kevin Hapier doesn't feel like that right now. And this is frankly not, on this hot and humid night, this line and responsible for bases loaded off a tough loss like last night, a brutal loss. Not what Art Howe was looking for from a veteran pitcher at all. And now Doug Jones is in with his 78-mile-an-hour fastballs, and he's going to be pitching to Scott Brocious. So we're going to talk about Dougie. I know we get a bases loaded, but it's like the history of baseball when you look up his bio, and he's pitched for 20 different professional teams, starting in 1978 with Newark.
Just down the road here, you know.
Yeah, like Burlington, Vermont. Holyoke. Did you ever play in Holyoke when you were in the Eastern League? No. At any rate, we'll do that next inning, because he's not in just to face one batter. Bases loaded, and one-time Oakland A Scott Brocious broke in 1991, and they gave Jose Canseco a breather in right field. Brocious went into right, and I think hit 2 triples, he told me before the game, and then he replaced Jose Canseco for a day in 91. Oh, he's going to drive it some more. Justice scores. Tino Martinez scores. Grieve with trouble in there. Posada scores. Bases clearing double for Scott. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
This pitch right here, fastball, down, and he goes and get it. But watch Ben Grieve. Ben Grieve gets a late jump on the ball, and as he gets over there, he starts slowing down, and he could have cut that ball off. He decides to go to the wall. That allows another run to score. I think Ben Grieve underestimated the speed.
Oh! Tejada robs Luis Sojo. They're either horrible out there or they're unbelievable. But this score is unbelievable. After 4, 10-0 Yankees. The famous facade of Yankee Stadium and a score that the Yankees, well, it's like the Yankees of old. 10-0 as we go to the 5th, and we're going to see these Yankees next Wednesday night deep in the heart of Texas. It's the last game of their 6-game road swing. That'll be the ESPN game at 7 Eastern. Some of you will see Tampa Bay at Boston. The late game is on ESPN 2. These A's hosting the Cleveland Indians, the 1-2 team for the wild card race right now. Some will see the Tigers at Safeco against the Mariners. Well, Andy Pettitte gets runs. Tonight he's got a bunch of them. By the way, Ray, Yapier's ERA, 10 earned runs he gave up tonight. Okay, so from 4.39 to 4.93. So his ERA goes up about 2/3 of a run tonight. And this one is barring. I saw it once, and you know, actually, we're coming up to about the 10-year anniversary next week of one of the most amazing baseball games I've ever seen. It's our first year doing baseball in 1990. As Andy Pettitte is 1-1 to the catcher south of sound. First year doing baseball in 1990. August 18th-ish. I got to look it up. Phillies at Dodgers. Center field, Bernie Williams makes the catch. 1 out. 11-1 LA at home through 7. Every starter was pinch hit for by Lasorda. Fernando pinch hit a fly ball to the outfield. It's 11-1. They're playing the Phillies, managed by Nick Leyva. They were not very good, as you remember. Phillies get 2 in the 8th, and this young team is like applauding. They make it 11-3. Doing the game with Tommy Hutton. I put my score. I didn't score from the 7th inning on. Why bother? 9 in the 9th. The Phillies got. Offerman booted a double play ball to get it started. Famous Philadelphia Philly Dale Murphy hit a bases loaded double. John Kruk, who had annoyed Leyva earlier in the day, so he sat him, pinch hit a 3-run homer in the 9th. Tommy shattered a coffee mug in the dugout. Foul ball. So 10 years ago, about this week, the Phillies got 9 in the 9th and won a game 12-11. Just can happen, but I got to admit, not often. You ever been involved, Ray, with a huge comeback either side, like a 10-run, 9-run variety?
In '95, the coach with the Reds, the Mets, were beating us at home on a Saturday, about 7 runs, and we came back, run again, hit a home run to tie the game. We ended up winning the next innings, 6 or 7 run lead. Of course, the biggest comeback that I have ever been a part of, although it was only 2 runs, it was with 2 outs.
Well, I remember that one, all right?
Trying to make sure you do.
I do. We all have our stories in New England of what we were doing at that time. Ooh, that's a nice play by Luis Sojo. He can play defense, chunky, but he's played all 4 positions in the infield, but especially second base.
Well, he's what we call a ball player, a guy that goes out and he doesn't impress you too many ways, but he just makes all the plays defensively, offensively, chips in every once in a while for a base hit. And Terrence Long can fly. That ball's down and away, chop. No chance for Pettitte. This bare hand, the only chance he's got to make the play. Still makes it bang bang with great speed from Long. Luis Sojo. I mean, and again, when you go back and look at what the Yankees have done, you take a month away from them, and they're an average ball club. You mentioned they're 1 game under 500 prior to Justice coming over here.
Well, they're actually, Ray, 1 game under 500 from May 9th on. So that with the Justice, they're 10 over. So they were way under 500. Now, there's a guy pitching with a 10-run lead, doing what you want to do. Make him hit the ball, make him make the outs. Back in New York, Chris Berman, Ray Knight, and a big Yankee lead. 5 in the 3rd, 4 in the 4th, 10-0 here as we hit the bottom of the 5th. As Doug Along Came Jones did not supply the relief. Bases loaded, surrendered the double. Brocious clearing the bases. We had a 7-0 game, a 10-0 game, and here we go. And you know what? This is a rough week for these Oakland A's because they lose a heartbreak Saturday in Chicago. They balk by Isringhausen in the ninth. Isringhausen in the ninth tied it. Frank Thomas a double to win it in the 10th. Then they come out on Sunday, and Tim Hudson, who was their little Pedro, you know, they're almost automatic with him. They get beat 13-0. Last night here in New York, brutal loss. Veteran pitcher Apier being pounded. Tough. That's tough, right? You, as a manager with a young team, you really have to figure out how you want to approach this after tonight, which is the second time in a week, right?
Well, it's little tiny baby steps, Chris, when you have young talent. Now, Apier is another story. He's a guy that's been through the wars, and you expect him to come out here and pitch a good ball game. And that's what we mentioned in the open with Giambi being the team leader. Your leader starts on the mound. If your pitcher doesn't give you a good outing, then chances are you're going to struggle to win if you don't get pitching. Apier, I know that Artie Howe felt really good tonight coming into this ball game, feeling Apier was throwing the ball a lot better. But when you get Hudson hammered for 13 runs and had his earned run average go up about a half a point, and you look last night at the game that was pitched by Barry Zito and have them to lose that ball game.
No, Apier.
And then Apier, but you start to feel momentum shifts during the course of the season, and it's where your team is right now. It's not where you've been. It's not what your record is. It's how that makeup in that clubhouse is.
Jones strikes out Jeter.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Hyundai. Every Hyundai is backed by America's best warranty with 10 years powertrain coverage. And by Nike.
Paul O'Neill up, took the helmet off the camera, and he's back in there, Ray. 10 runs, by the way, Marty Quality Aronoff, along with Peter Pepperdine, Pete Pasquarelli, and Malibu Marty Aronoff providing us with our info. The 10 runs given up by Apier, the most he's ever given up in his entire career. Usually you're not in there to give up the 10, of course, but it's a career in which he has close to 200 decisions. Not a night he'll look back on fondly. He will. Slam for Tino. 5 RBIs tonight. I'm still looking back at the Doug Jones page here with all the whistle stops. 1978, huh? First year in organized ball. Butler University, Doug Jones. Lebanon, Indiana. Now 43 years young. And Newark, Burlington, Vermont. It's got to be Vermont, I think, although there's a Burlington in the Northern League, so I don't know. Stockton, Vancouver, Holyoke, Massachusetts. They haven't had a team there in a long time, Ray. I can tell you that. Wow. Came around and kind of hit Fasano on the back, and we'll continue reading the Doug Jones geography quiz.
Bill Pito back in the studio as Coors takes us to Kansas City for Mike Sweeney. His team down 2-1. 2 men aboard, though, and there it goes. Sweeney's now got 17 homers on the year, and the Jays at home, or I should say the Royals at home, lead the Jays 5-2 top 4.
All right, Billy, what do we have? 10-0 lead for the Yankees here in the top of the 6th. Ray, in 7 of Pettitte's 22 starts, the Yankees have scored 10 or more runs. They got 13 for him Friday against the Mariners. Jeez, I might go 500 with all those runs. You, I know, will be a 20-game winner. Me, I'm just looking to be 10-10.
Andy Pettitte, speaking of Andy Pettitte, 12 of his last 15 outings, he's gone 7 innings or more. Pretty easy to go 7 innings when you're getting all those runs.
Yeah, but you know what? I think lost in all of it because of the way he pitches, and he never has a rarely has a stretch of a couple of months where he's dominating in his own way. I mean, it's a staff with some big-name guys. Roger Clemens, Cone, El Duque, and the postseason pitcher he was last year. You know, before that, when they were winning, well, Cone was much more of a factor. 96. Andy Pettitte has made, well, from 96 to 99, we told you that his 69 wins are third most in baseball. But Andy Pettitte has made 132 starts, over 30 every time, okay? Now this year, it's his 22nd start. That'll drop in front of Bernie for a base hit. So Jambi is the second hit of the night. So 132 plus 22, 154 plus 13 postseason starts, 167 starts in 4.5 years. I mean, let's not lose the fact that he goes to the mound every 5 days and pitches.
Well, there's no doubt. He is. You look at his record and his stats, and he's got an under 4 earned run average throughout his career. You mentioned all the games he's won. But I was looking back at his 2000 starts when you mentioned the fact that they scored all those runs for him, Chris. In 3 of those games, he left leading 13-5, 10-2, and 16-0. You take those 3 games out, they only score 5 runs an outing for him. So, you know, that average stuff is always something that you go and look and break down. I also saw 3 games where he's trailing 4-3, 4-1, 4-1, 3-0. So those are just situations where he actually has had 3 inflated games where they scored a bundle of runs.
A lot they get none, right?
And the rest of the games have been very close. So, you know, he is a quality pitcher, one of the top 15 in the game, one of the top 5 left-handers.
167 starts. I mean, that's, you get the ball. Obviously, he's pitching for a great team, and he's getting runs, as you point out, not all the time is what the stats would tell you. But I think of the game he pitched in 96, the duel, the 1-0 duel in Game 5 against Smoltz in the World Series. Sky to center. Bernie Williams should have it. This ball hit by Adam Hyatt. He does. I think of Game 4 in the 98 World Series when, okay, the Yankees on Brocious' heroics off of Trevor Hoffman essentially got them to 3-0 lead at San Diego. They were going to win it, but he beat Kevin Brown 3-0. I think last year he won against Texas. He won against Boston in the opening 2 rounds. He got off the hook in that great game. Curtis hit the home run off the game Glavine started in Game 3. But my point is that I think overlooked is that he's come up big in a lot of big situations. If there's anyone that maybe a little bit is taken for granted on this team, certainly in the pitching, I think it's been him. You agree?
I agree, and you don't hear much about him. And when you don't hear much about somebody, they're generally doing their job. It's just like an umpire. And, you know, we've heard a lot about Cone. We've heard a lot about Roger Clemens and their struggle. El Duque and his attitude problems. Mendoza with his problems in and out of the rotation with his shoulder. And Andy Pettitte is just a solid number 2 starter. Used to, Chris, as managers or managerial types, you'd look and you'd want 7 innings. El Duque a little happier today, seemingly. From a starter, that'd be 245 innings and 35 starts. And that would really classify him as a number 1 starter. Now, in today's game of relief pitching, short relievers, setup men, you're really looking for just 6 innings per start. That's 210 innings a year. If you go by that criteria, in 96, Andy had 221 innings, so that's a number 1 starter. 240 in 97, 220 in 98, and 191 last year when he missed 4 starts. So he's putting up the stats, the innings, as you said, like a number 1 starter.
Yes.
Going out there every day, not missing a start, giving you 6+ innings. And as a result, that's why he's a 3rd winningest pitcher in the last 5 years. One thing that is interesting about him is that he has regressed in his win totals, 21, 18, 16, 14 the last 4 years.
Good point. That's a nice play by Brocious. Soho turns it. And we have, hidden in this 10-0 game, seen some nice plays in the infield. Roches and Soho turn the double play. 10-0 New York. 10-0, bottom 6. Williams, Justice, and Chino Martinez, the heart of the order. For the Yankees coming up against the third Oakland pitcher of the night, T.J. Matthews. And he may take us to the finish here, Ray. 6, 7, 8. I think that's what Art Howe has in mind. And you can see his numbers being hit pretty hard. 64 hits and 49 2/3. Has not pitched the way he has last year. New second baseman is a New York product from Staten Island, New York. Frank Menechino. So he goes in for Velarde. And we go with Bernie Williams. You know, I figured Doug Jones was good for another inning or two. We were going to read some of these other cities. I'm bummed.
You got
He
enough
pitched in
information for a year.
1985. I forgot. He pitched for Waterbury. They were the Indians that year, the Waterbury Indians. You ever play in there? Did Waterbury have a team when you were in the East?
Yes, they did. In 1973, they were a Dodger farm club.
Yes, they were. Richie Zisk played there, right?
That's right.
I believe he came up about right. I don't know if you played him there, but
I didn't play against Richie Zisk.
yeah, he may have been a little before. No, he was Pirates. He came up with. That's right. Dodgers. Were they the Dodgers when you played there? They were the Dodgers.
1973, they were the Dodgers.
Waterbury had the Dodgers. They had the Pirates. They had the Giants. Rick Sutcliffe pitched at Waterbury. But anyway, Doug Jones pitched at Waterbury. Now he's out of the game. I was just starting to rev up some of these stops. But we'll have Oakland again in a few weeks, probably. Read it again.
T.J. Matthews had a great start last year, then developed some problems, had bone spurs removed from his elbow. He's always been a real hard thrower, two-seamer and four-seamer, around 90 miles an hour. Has struggled with his release point this year. Has dropped down a little bit more, a little below three-quarter angle. Was always a three-quarter type pitcher when he's with the Cardinals. See his motion there. He's got that finger taped into his glove. His hitters were reading, and he had a tendency when he'd grip that slider of his, he'd use that finger, and see how they've made that web there for his index finger. A lot of pitchers have a tendency when they go in their glove to make a grip, they'll wiggle that finger on a particular pitch. And you see here they've created that. So you can put your finger in there and there won't be a wiggle, or they can't tell when you're tightening up when you grip. There you go. We had to chase him a little bit with that camera, but we found him.
We got, hey, you can't escape us. Even if you put Paul O'Neill's helmet on the camera, we're going to find him. Sano looks, but it's out of play. Last year, T.J. Matthews, I told you, he had a big year for them. 9-5, 3.81 ERA. Year before with Art Howe when Oakland was not a contender, 7-4, 4.58. Year before that with Oakland, coming over in the McGuire trade, was 6-2. So as far as records go, he's done very well. Not pitching though the way he can, and middle relief has been trouble. Oh, that's poked to center field. Back. Gone. Whoa, that was no. It rolls all the way up. What were the bleachers? It went all the way. I'm going to show you this in a minute. It went all the way up to the back wall. Man.
That ball would have probably still been rolling had it not been for the kid picking it up, and Bernie Williams was about to cross home plate.
Let's show you where it really went. Oh, my God. Did I just say his middle relief has not been what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
You know, I don't normally step on you, partner, but when you said, I said, whoa, that ball was crushed.
Let's show you where this went. Can we do that? No. All right, now watch. It hits, doink, 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 and off the back row. Oh, my God.
They're trying to get Bernie to come out. Look how long it rolled. Bernie was almost to home plate when that ball stopped rolling.
Luis Soho coming out starting as Bertie Williams. David Justice fouling that one off himself.
Well, he wears that protector thing on his shin. He doesn't have it down there on his foot. What happens when you try to pull those down and in sinkers.
Three homers tonight for the Yankees. Well, here's
ball down and in. Fasano setting up outside, and the ball just straight down on his instep. He got all of this. Unfortunately, his foot absorbed it. A lot of hitters wearing that plastic protector there.
Smart move. You know, way back when, well, it's hard for me to say. I'm still looking at that area where Bernie hit the ball, Ray. And I went to a lot of games here as a kid at the old configuration. It's hard to really.
Well, what was the deepest part out there?
Wow, deepest part was 463.
And that was
and then they would have the bleachers behind it, which they would sit. I mean, there's seats, although they're never used, I guess, in a series way. They're not used in this day and age, but way back when, 463, and then they'd have bleachers back there. You could sit back there, which would be 500 feet away. I mean, Mantle hit a couple way back in the bleachers there. He could have. Jose could have, for sure. The old stadium before they changed it in the mid-70s to this configuration.
Chris, out there where those numbers are, is that the old wall?
No.
No?
No. You know what left center was, too? This will amaze you. And we've talked about dead center. It's one thing that dead center was 463, okay? Left center was 457. All right, now dead center was where the monuments used to be in play, remember?
Right.
In center field. I once saw Kari Yastrzemski hit, well, the Babes, the monuments of the Babe and Gehrig and Miller Huggins were in play in straightaway center field. I once saw Kari Yastrzemski hit one to the monuments and was caught for an hour.
Mantle?
I think it was after Mantle, but it doesn't matter. Mercer, I think. It wasn't an unbelievable. I mean, it wasn't like it was Willie Mays' catch. 450 for an out. Ray, what do you think? Paul O'Neill talks to himself now? Look out. Remember, the New York Giants played football here, so they had to have it big enough to get the football field. And the football field went because center and left center were so deep. That was one end zone, center and left center field, and they came toward the first baseline was the other goal line.
Well, I remember as a kid, right field being only like 3 feet high, the wall.
I'll tell you exactly what it was. Justice walks, and Tino is up with another runner on. Way back when it was a 1-0 game, Terrence Long misplayed this ball by Polonia, and later in the inning with the bases juiced, Tino Martinez juiced his 11th home run. And took a very quick curtain call. That made it 6-0 at the time. David Justice is in, and Clay Bellinger is the pinch runner for Justice after fouling it off his foot, which of course is a very wise move in an 11-0 game.
You know how we talked in the open about you never know when somebody's going to get hurt, and that's why I think you need to stack up as many good players as you can. Jim Bowden, my general manager in Cincinnati, taught me that.
Wow. That was pretty well hit, too, by Tino, but it's an out too long.
Because he would say, I don't care how many players you have, you're never going to have enough. And he'd stockpile the AAA roster with former big league players just in case you have injuries, and you're going to have injuries. You go through years when you have 5 or 6 injuries like the Atlanta Braves. I mean, they lost their Kilvio Veras. They lost Reggie Sanders for a long time. Galarraga's been out. Walt Weiss has been out. They lost
Smoltz
Eddie
gone.
Perez, Smoltz. Remlinger was out. And that's why they struggle. I mean, if you go out of spring training with the 25 players you pick, when you're the caliber club of the Yankees, you'll blow people away if you stay healthy. But they've had a great run over the last 4 years with people being healthy and staying healthy.
Yeah,
Pretty healthy fellow there.
Yeah, they got a guy now. He's not been. You know, I asked Joe, could Jose play left field? He said, he's had a little bit of a leg injury, but he worked out there yesterday a little bit. And he said that could happen. It's not like, hey, he's never going to play left field.
2 men born in Cuba.
Yeah. Left in different circumstances.
You know, I read an article. Jose Cardinal was the person that was basically the liaison between management and El Duque, because he could communicate. Oftentimes, El Duque would not understand what was said to him in English. Cardinal became kind of his interpreter. I wonder how much that had to do with acquisition of Canseco.
Rung him up. So Posada is gone. And that'll bring up Scott Brocious, our Old Spice in-game box score. Been pretty spicy for the Yankees. Polonia with a couple of hits. Of course, Tino with the 5 RBIs. Bernie Williams with a monster home run, 2 walks and 2 hits. So he's been aboard all 4 times. You know, you're ahead 11-0. There's going to be a lot of guys fattening up in the average. And he fattened up pretty well. You asked me about the old Yankee Stadium. The wall was, I think, 4 feet. Because Frank Robinson, when he played for Baltimore, and Al Kaline, when he played for Detroit, often went over the fence into the crowd. And you are not allowed to jump for your young fans, because you don't see a 4-foot wall anymore. You are not allowed to actually jump in the crowd and stand there in the first row and make a catch. You have to be airborne. But you could be falling back over the wall and bat a ball back in. I saw Frank do it, and I saw Al Kaline do it, Ray. And the center fielder went over and hold them to a triple. They would rob a home run, literally.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know who. I think it was Maris that I saw.
Yeah, he went in.
Fall in there and bat a ball out. It would almost remind you a lot of Fenway Park, where that short right field out there around the bullpen.
Yes. Where
outfielders pedal back, back pedal, and then stumble over the fence.
Off the glove of Chavez, well hit by Brocious. Probably be a base hit. We'll let you know. I'll give you a name you haven't heard of, and maybe you forgot, but the Yankees, even those great Yankee teams, when you didn't have that many bench guys, you never heard of them. But you'd always have to have a 4th outfielder. Even though you had in the 60s, it was Mantle and Maris and Tresh was in left field. Hector Lopez, do you remember that name?
I sure do.
Former Kansas City A, as a matter of fact. Came here. I saw him go over and make a couple circus catches when he played right, number 11. I don't know if Zim ever did it, but
57, 58, Chris. I used to, in my backyard, and I still have the scorebook where I'd have the Milwaukee Braves and the New York Yankees, who were pitted against each other in the World Series. And I was only 5 and 6 years old and actually had a scorebook of the World Series. And a friend of mine, Julian Stenson, from Albany, Georgia, we used to go out in the backyard, and I would always be the Braves because I loved the National League, and he'd be the Yankees. Would hit ground balls in the alley, you know, and always the fence. If you hit it in the air, it was a triple. If you hit it over, it had to be an out. But off the wall, the chain link fence to the left would be a double. Off the oak tree would be a single. But I remember Hector Lopez. I surely do. Clete Boyer, Bobby Richardson, Tony Kubek, Lou Skowron.
Yep.
As you mentioned, Tresh. And
Tresh was later on. He was 62 rookie of the year. And he wasn't in that series, but so many of those guys were. I mean, those were the Braves and Yankees back-to-back series, one by Milwaukee. And of course the Yankees coming back in '58.
Well, my idol growing up was Eddie Matthews, who played with the Milwaukee Braves and later on came to Atlanta and became a manager for Atlanta Braves, great Hall of Famer. But my first uniform in Little League, my mother and dad bought me a uniform with 41 and had 41 put on the back, and it was always my favorite number. But when I went to Cincinnati, Tom Seaver had it.
And try again.
Yeah.
Oh, Tejada with it. Oh, he's safe. That was another fun play.
Hey, I've seen him make 4 plays tonight, and you talk about shortstops that are flashy. This is as flashy and efficient as they come. I mean, he's making plays no other shortstop gets to. This is a bullet up the middle, right between the pitcher's legs. There's no other shortstop I know makes that play. That's a bullet. And I believe he's out.
He was out. He was out.
Let's look right here. But look at this ball. I mean, that's 3 feet on the other side of second base, and he ends up making his play, and he's definitely out.
Please.
I guess the umpire must have thought he missed the bag. Tejada, he plays with so much emotion, doesn't he? And, you know, and like I say, this is the first time I've seen him live. Last time we were here, Menachino played shortstop about a month and a half ago when I was here doing a game. And I didn't get to see Tejada. He had the night off, but all the
things. It's been a treat.
Gosh.
Meanwhile, again, the Yankees have the bases loaded, Ray, for Luis Polonia.
I mean, how many times do you see a shortstop dive 3 times in one game?
Well, and make that
backhanded play.
Almost looks like an option quarterback. You know, now Congressman J.C. Watts used to run at Oklahoma like the wishbone. He was out. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. Or he looked to be out. At any rate, call's not going to much matter. T.J. Matthews, 35 pitches this inning.
It's going to matter to T.J.'s earned run average is what it's going to matter about.
Soho hadn't had a hit. That wouldn't have been one, but he gets one on the call, so it matters to his average. Jose Vizcaíno will come out to bat and play short for Jeter.
Another great acquisition. We haven't even spoken about that with Knobloch having his problems with his throwing arm. Go out and acquire such a great professional as Vizcaíno.
Polonia strikes out. 7th inning stretch if you're an Oakland fan, but it's a stretch out of frustration. Well, Andy Pettitte says this is pretty good now. 11-run lead, 7th inning, and he's got himself a couple of new fielders. Saw Jose Vizcaíno at short in the on-deck circle. He is going into play short for Derek Jeter, and Clay Bellinger, who pinch ran for Justice, will stay in left. Chris Berman, Ray Knight, you know what? We're talking baseball fans, and I know it's 11-0. You're not on the edge of your seat, but for those, and I really mean this, you know we mean this, we have the best viewers in the world, because those of you who are hanging with us and ESPN's production Wednesday Night Baseball, an 11-0 game that's been pretty much like this for an hour, are just kind of hanging out with us and enjoying, and we enjoy the fact that you like baseball. And we hope we're announcing it that way and presenting it to you with the pictures and the sounds. Ben Grieve flies out to Bernie Williams. Billy Pino, what situations could possibly be developing?
This is developing, Chris, in Cincinnati. The Braves and the Reds. Ken Griffey Jr. at the plate here in the 3rd. His team is down 6-2, but Griff is going to get a hold of one against Tom Glavine. And that's his 33rd home run of the year. That is 3 off the major league lead. It's 4th best in the National League. Now 6-3 was a solo home run.
All right, Billy, thank you. Mike Stanley trying to get his timing down. Fouls it off. The Reds are, Ray, I know their quote in it, the Cards lost again today. I mean, St. Louis without McGuire. I know Will Clark's giving him some juice, but I mean, the door is all of a sudden open a little bit, but the Reds just don't seem to want to go through it.
Well, the door's wide open. Cardinals have been playing horrible. You know, we're talking about the field of teams and how they are right now as opposed to what their seasonal record is. And you look at Seattle, they're playing really well.
Was it Red? They would like that trade back, wouldn't they? Maybe.
At this point, they might.
Yeah.
You know, their pitching has not been good. But they did acquire some nice young talent.
Yes, they did.
But again, the Yankees are starting to play extremely well.
No surprise there.
No surprise. And the feeling that was there in April, May, June, what's wrong with the Yankees, is now suddenly turned to, you know, they're the Yankees again.
Yes, they are.
The Braves have struggled a little bit of late.
Yeah, but they're
not playing solid defensively, but they're a solid baseball team. The Giants are playing great.
Very well.
The Dodgers have started to play better over the last month. Last week, not so good.
The Diamondbacks are in and out. Yeah, of course, when you win, the century's 100 years, and you win a fourth of them.
Yes.
You win 25 of the 100. Actually, there were less than 100 World Series play, but you win 25 in 1 century, witnessed all by Zim. We love that, you know. And next week I told Zim, because he always asked me, we always have a game in August with them late. Give me your long shots in football.
He is so.
I said, next Wednesday we'll discuss the long shots. He's waiting. He said, next Wednesday we have a date. We're talking football for the pool.
He is so funny, Chris. If we have some. He told me today they used to call him 81. All he wanted to talk about was golf. He didn't want to talk about baseball. He said, they used to call me 81 because it didn't matter where I played, I shot 81. He said, now they call me 101.
Hey, if he's 69 years or shooting 101,
yeah,
I'll take that.
But he said he went out with a couple of friends the other day up to Westchester, and they said, what's your handicap? Well, he said he didn't want to be embarrassed. You know how competitive he is. He said, I just told him 18. I go out and I make a putt on number 1 for a par. I made a putt on number 2 for a par. They said, wait a minute now. He said, you're sandbagging us.
Tino will take it. Chavez gone. 1-2-3 inning for Pettitte. 7th inning stretch time in New York. And the Yankees trying to stretch their lead out more.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Killian's Irish Red, which reminds you one look says a lot, and by Pep Boys. Cars like us, people love us.
That's what you should be doing at the park, having a good time. Yankee fans are up 11-0. A seat behind the dugout. New pitcher for Oakland is Mike McNanty. So much for just using 2 guys, using like everyone for about an inning. And there are his numbers. And when you have more walks and strikeouts out of the pen, that's not a good thing. Right, Ray? I mean, I didn't manage, but I can come up with that. And the new left fielder is Ryan Christensen, so Ben Grieve will call it a night. 33,466. Attendance tonight. We started, this is Jose Vizcaíno. You started to talk about him, Ray.
Well, a guy that's always been a real solid player, nothing flashy, but just goes about his business and does a tremendous job. Whether he plays shortstop or second, he's short a little short on range, but he always makes the plays. A great professional, a guy that bunts, hits the ball on the ground for a hit and run, and just makes all the plays defensively. And a guy that, again, Ryan Cashman has done a tremendous job, I'm certain, by the urgency of Mr. Steinbrenner, but every need that this club has had, they filled.
So Vizcaíno and Soho perished the thought anything happened to Jeter, they'd be there. And of course, they're in there with Knobloch out. Who knows how long that's going to go. Chuck on the DL now. Go to MajorLeagueBaseball.com for the most complete baseball coverage on the internet. I mean, leave us on while you do it, please. But you can go do it. I mean, you can get on the computer and watch TV at the same time. It's like walking and chewing gum. You can do that. Paul O'Neill, helmet back off lens, on head.
Well, Paul is so intense.
He's looking for his first hit, Ray, tonight.
Yeah, and looking down the scorecard, 1 of 2 Yankees without a hit. But he's a guy that just goes up there, and I mean, the reason he hits 300 every year is because he just does not give away very many at-bats. He is into every at-bat. And he's tremendously hard on himself, but I've never known a great hitter that wasn't. Tony Gwynn, Pete Rose, Wade Boggs, George Brett, guys that were in my era, tremendous hitters, Rod Carew, every at bat. And it is hard to do, Chris, when you go up there 600 times a year to be focused and on top of everything, because you have injuries, you have a family. I mean,
yep, he's going to be 0 for 5 as Tejada guns him out. You know, last year was the first time since he was a Yankee. Remember, he started, really, it was one of the first moves made by this Yankee team. He came over in '93. Last year was the first time he didn't hit 300 as a Yankee. And this year, Paul, with the, I mean, tonight, okay, went in hitting 311 and an 0 for 5. Obviously, he'll still be over 300 at this point in the year. Bernie Williams, 2 walks, single, scored, and a long home run to dead center. His 26th of the year. Bernie walked twice. Justice walked 3 times tonight, Ray. Posada walked twice, 1 intentional.
well, it reminds you of the Yankees of the last 3 or 4 years, where they've gone deep in the count. Earlier this year, talking to Joe Torre, Chris Chambliss, talking about this ball club was not patient. They were swinging at all kinds of pitches, were not getting their pitch to hit, not going deep in the count. Paul O'Neill tearing up his gloves. Helmet, gloves, bat. Himself.
Adam Hyatt calls for it in right. And a 1-2-3 7th for the Yanks. Headed to the 8th in the ball yard of the Bronx. We'll be back. Welcome back to New York. Our Old Spice in-game box score for the A's. Not a lot happening except for Jason Giambi, 2 hits, doubled in the first. Chavez with a hit, but Andy Pettitte has given up just 4 hits. 1 to Ben Grieve, who's now out of the lineup, and Ryan Christensen is in left. Sal Fasano, average now at 194. You know, in August, Ray, that's not good.
No. You get...
That's not good.
Yeah, that's enough said.
Dave Valley-esque. Dave wasn't always down there, but the 1 year will never be forgotten. You live in infamy when you do that. Remember the bar Swannies up in Seattle? They were... beers would be what his average was at the end of that night. So the fans would root for an over for him, and then it, you know, beer would be $1.39. Jeff Tam throwing in the pen. So we're going to see all the setup guys oil it up, lather up tonight, Ray. And since nobody pitched very long, obviously day game tomorrow, I mean, no problem coming back with any one of them. Excuse me.
Well, the pitching coach and the manager sets up not only the rotation, but they keep a chart day in and day out of how many pitches are thrown, how many innings pitches, how many times you get up and warm up in the bullpen.
Ball hit to left, back it goes, back by, hey! Serve up a beer.
$2.
Sal Fasano, a $2 lager. He's charging, he's fired up. And the shutout is gone for Pettitte. Yeah, good for him. Ball comes back on the field. For Fasano, his 6th homer.
Well, Pettitte doing exactly what he's supposed to do, trying to throw the ball over the plate. As he gets a little tired, his fastball is going to get up because his legs get tired and he's not able to finish. Left that ball up out over the plate. Fasano hit it a long way. Nobody in the... Actually, we do have some activity in the Yankee bullpen.
Well, the shutout's gone now, so... Yeah, there'd be no real reason now for him to keep going, right? You like to go complete game shutout, but at this point,
Well,
That's gone.
Right. He doesn't have a complete game over the course of the season. You've got to realize that, you know, in the month of August and September, he's going to have probably another 8-10 starts. Well, he's got 22, and last year he ended up with 31 with 4 all starts, so he probably has 13 more starts.
So in this update, beers are at Sal's Pub are $2.02. So 1 for 3, man. When you come in at 198 to start the game, you go 1 for 3. That's like to the moon, Alice. Your average is skyrocketing. So a night for Oakland that's been a disaster, except for the plays at short by Miguel Tejada. Will be remembered that Sal Fasano maybe left the Mendoza line for the last time. Maybe. Let's hope so.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do, is look on that bubblegum card and look on the back of it and see 1 something.
Well, the Sunday averages, the way they used to print them in the paper, and you're at the very bottom.
You started
it's awful.
That's a bad feeling.
Awful. Terrence Long, base hit. Here come the A's. After our game, and we apologize to our friends, Steve Levy, Harold Reynolds. I'm going to call him right now. Harry, sorry, we're a little late. Baseball tonight coming up after the game, and of course, midnight, the complete hour. Baseball tonight. Big unit against the Expos. I'll show you what's going on with that. Wild card races. Sports Center coming up after that. That is Jason Ed Grimley. Jason Grimsley. I call him Ed Grimley. Last year he vultured a lot of wins. Remember that? He'd be in there and end up with a lot of wins out of the pen. He's done a good job. He got a little tired toward the end of last year and maybe showing signs of that this year, but been a big pickup by the Yankees. Frank Menachino. And the Staten Island boy grounds into a double play. Let's go to Bill Pito. Billy.
All right, Chris, for the Mets, Darrell Hamilton, first game of the year, back from that arthritic toe situation. And watch this. It's going to only at Enron Field, right? Hits the padding. They had no idea what the ruling was. They asked Astros GM Jerry Hunsicker, what do you do when it hits the padding? He said, I don't know. So Darrell Hamilton, his first game back, credited with a home run. Wow, all Mets, 9-2, top 6.
You know, sometimes you can gimmick it up a little much. Just below us. You know, maybe they should just start the train and figure it out.
That's weird. I mean, I couldn't really tell on that ball what they're talking about.
I couldn't either.
The padding.
Billy, next time you come back, explain it to us. I don't know. It's either above the line or below the line, right?
Well, I mean, if
Candlestick. Pac Bell has one that an ump has to make a tough call on, that it would come back into play, but there's a line there, and I mean that's some parts have that.
Generally, the line is.
This is Jeremy Jambi, by the way, pinch hitting. Go ahead, Ray.
Generally, the line is parallel to the top of the fence, and anything above that goes over or passes that imaginary line is a home run. You know, in some ballparks, certainly you have that situation in Florida where they have a line there that comes out in left field after the big, tall billboards and scoreboard. It drops down, and then out there around 334. But all you have to do, I think, is go out there and look over the line, over the fence, pure straight up, and if that ball eclipses that imaginary line over the fence, it's a home run, unless it's stated in the ground rules differently, because it left the ballpark.
Well, you're managing, and that's opposite way, hitting by Jeremy Jambi, batting for his brother Jason Jambi, and he has a base hit. All right, Billy, now explain this to us, will you please? We're slow.
Well, I don't know that I'm any quicker, but take a look as Turner Ward goes back. Watch where the ball hits, guys. Right there. So they gave him a home run, really went off the padding, and Darrell Hamilton, just back from that significant absence, given credit for his first home run of the season.
You know what, when you go out there, Ray, thank you, Billy, when you go out there, Ray, in these new parks, but you know, the meeting with the umpires, well, we'll discuss it when we come back. Broaches throws out Adam Pyatt. That ends the top of the 8th. Be back at the bottom of the 8th to discuss the padding at Enron when we return.
Bill Pettitte back in the studio. The Reds seem to be sleepwalking early, but they have come alive. They were once down 6-2. Right now, we're all tied up at 6. We're in the 5th inning. Alex Ochoa past Andrew Jones, who lets it go all the way to the wall. Dante Bichette scores. Dimitri Young scores. And the Reds have come all the way back. They're now up 8-6.
Wow. But they had a wild series there, that Reds-Braves series, Ray. Monday, 2 in the 9th, 1 in the 10th for the Reds. Yesterday, a 1-run game for the Braves. This is Jeff Tam, the new pitcher. Has done very well. Lately has struggled, but now that's a little more like it. 17 walks, 36 strikeouts, ERA under 3. So he's the new pitcher, and Jeremy Jombie stays in first in place of brother Jason Jombie. Bottom of the 8th, 11-1. Yanks. And I would assume, Ray, that Andy Pettitte's done. Judging by that, I'd say yes.
Well, Andy, another great outing. And although this team gets him a lot of runs, his earned run average now under 4.
There he is.
That's a lot of pitches. 100.
Yeah, but I don't care how many runs you get. 8 innings, 7 hits, 1 run.
Oh, that's a pretty line. That's a pretty line.
Clay Bellinger. Tejada in a straight play at short. There's Jeremy Jombie. We told you about it. Now here he is. Former Royal. And manager Billy Beane went to Jason Jombie. Said, what do you think? Pick up my brother. Do it. He can help us. They did. So Bellinger grounded out.
Speaking of Billy Beane, former teammate of mine with the New York Mets, just a part-time outfielder, but a great mind, a guy that loved the game, always asking questions about the game. Sandy Alderson, protege. Sandy took him under his wing, offered him an advanced scout position. Billy Beane retired on the spot, become an advanced scout. Did such a great job, was moved into the front office under Alderson. And Sandy, after he got him groomed and decided to move on to Major League Baseball, Billy Beane became the general manager, and what a great job he's done putting together this ball club. One of the things Billy Beane talks about is that he's been able to acquire hitters for 50 cents on the dollar as opposed to pitching. So they're trying to develop their young pitchers and draft young pitchers because of the cost is so excessive, and try to acquire hitters through either trades or free agency.
Very smart. You have to adjust now, boy. It's not even like being a GM 10 years ago. But learning from Sandy, he's learned from one of the best.
Maybe Peter Gammon's most favorite GM or former GM.
Yeah. I would say that's for sure. Tim Hudson.
Oh, man, that's
Oakland's
great.
little Pedro, they call him.
Great young talent. A lot like, in my mind, even more like Kevin Brown than Pedro. He's got that great sinker. He keeps everything knee-high and lower. Got ripped the other night, but again, having a tremendous season. 12-4, one of the 5 guys, I believe it's 5 or 6 men that won 20 games in his first 24 decisions.
Here's the fellow we talked about, Ray, who pitched so well yesterday, Barry Zito, rookie.
Well, you mentioned that. I mean, earlier, Zito, Mulder, and Hudson.
They're babies.
They're babies, and you know, you go around the general managers throughout the league, and I guarantee you, if you're taking 10 picks, the best young arms in the game, you look at that group in Seattle and these 3 men, and they're going to be in that 10 picks, along with Chris Benson, Richie.
Tam to Tino. Tino with 5 ribbies tonight. You know, who's pitched very well is a name we haven't mentioned all night for the A's. 2 straight years, a guy kind of forgotten about, Gil Heredia.
Boy, he has.
And here's the wild card situation, and the A's. We haven't had an Indian score now, have we? Grabbed by Ryan Christensen. They're winning in the 5th. Must have been raining in Ohio since he's late. Cleveland's late. Here's the wild card standings up to the moment. A lot of teams in there. A lot of good teams in there. This could be a very intriguing race because I don't know whether Boston or the Blue Jays are really going to catch the Yankees. I mean, they could. And in the end, I'm not sure, Ray.
I don't think so.
I think the Yankees might win that. Not going away, but you know, they sweated to the end with Boston last year. They might win it a little more comfortably. I think they won by, what, 4 last year. I don't know, but I mean, Boston's scrappy, but trying without Mondesi, that's a tough one. That's very tough.
Well, Yankees are the best ball club in this division. I mean, they've got the most talent. You look at their 8 players, and then their starting rotation, you know, with the exception of David Cohn, is solid. Mendoza obviously struggling, but Dwight Gooden has given him 4 great starts, and El Duque getting healthy. Rogers throwing the ball exceptionally well.
Very well.
Pettitte, you know, that bullpen is still solid, although Rivera has shown a few dents this year, has not been the dominating closer he's been in the past. But this Yankee ball club, with the additions they made of late, are the best ball team in this division. Thinking of Nagel and Pettitte and Roger Clemens. You need 3 starters that are pitching well to be able to get you to the playoffs. And they certainly have 3 guys in Nagel, Pettitte, and Clemens that are pitching well.
You have Cleveland, you know, pretty much not going to catch the White Sox, so they become the prime suspect, really, in the wild card race for a change. As Posada walks and Brocious comes up, and as we discuss the pennant races, we can discuss that this copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of the Office of the Commissioner of Baseball. May not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form. The accounts and description of the game may not be disseminated without express written consent. Now, because Alan Watson, Waddy, New York guy, comes back lefty to try to help the Yankees here down the stretch. So we'll see him in the 9th break. It's ripped by Brocious, who, oh, by the way, has 4 hits tonight.
Well, he's swinging it.
Oh, man, they're booting it around, and they're sending Posada. Tejada's relay is up the line. They have a dozen. They just don't. They look like they're playing underwater out there, Ray.
Young teams seem to do that, Chris, just day in and day out. The little things, hitting the cutoff man, making the play, cutting the ball off, gloving the ball properly. They're going real hard, trying to do something with the ball. I mean, all you have to do is cut that ball off, get it back into second base, and keep the double play in order. And instead, he tries to make a terrific play, and a run scores with the boot. I mean, just trying to do a little bit too much. There's a difference between understanding what you have to do and trying to do a little bit too much. Young players tend to try to do a little bit too much. And he did cover a lot of ground out there. That ball in left center field, the biggest left center field in baseball, going from 408 to 399, but he was playing Brocious to pull. There you see a lot of room.
Yeah,
ball was right in the middle of the gap, but
not like the old days when it was 457 out there.
I can't even imagine.
I know.
457.
By the way, it's a double and an error on long to allow the run score, so no RBI, because Posada was clearly pulling into third and stopping. If you're scoring at home, and you know that I know that some people are, and we respect that. That you sit at home and score 12-1 games to completion. I know people do it, and it's laudable. It's a lost art, keeping the score of a baseball game. Soho chops it. Chavez grabs it over to Jeremy Jambi. The Yankees are gone. We're heading to the 9th. A dozen for New York now. They lead 12-1.
Bill Pettitte back in the studio. Red Sox beginning play 4.5 behind the Yanks. Jeff Fassero, the start tonight against Anaheim. Ron Gant. Bottom of the first inning, there that one goes. Gant, of course, the former Philly. And it's 1-0. Now, Pete Harnisch for the Reds. He's been pitching, got batted around, but his team has come back. They're up 8-6. Harnisch still in the game and helping his own cause. 2-run home run, 10-6 Reds, top 6.
Yeah, maybe we were burying the Reds a little early. That just continues to be a wild series. Harnisch with a home run. There's a good guy that's come back from a lot of stuff. And a lot of pitchers doing hitting lately. The Giants pitchers doing some hitting. Livan Hernandez and Sean Estes. I think they have 10 and 8 RBIs. A couple others doing some hitting over the weekend. As we have a new pitcher, Alan Watson, as we told you, is in to pitch for Andy Pettitte to pick him up. As Pettitte goes 8, and we showed you the line. 8 runs, 7 hits, and 1 run. 8 innings, 7 hits, 1 run allowed. So Andy will go to 13-6. Two teams play. Waddy, 18 walks in 20 innings. Not what you want. Been hurt. Trying to get back. Well, he came up, Ray, many years ago. Threw hard, still does. And really thought that he might have a chance to impress with the stuff that he had. He's a pretty athletic guy, and figured that wouldn't be an arm breakdown, but instead he has had an injury play career. This is our boy Miguel Tejada, who has been great in a losing effort and playing with enthusiasm and making plays, backhanded. Wow, that looks like.
And that's in a 12-1 ball game.
He's in a running back for the Oakland Rays. Whoa! This is down the line and off the wall. Tejada digging in a 12-1 game. Safe. Good for him.
If you can't like this kid, if you don't tune in to watch a full ball game and something's wrong with you when you're looking at talent like this, it's not always the score of the game, Chris. It's the effort and the ability of these great players. This guy's got a lot of pop. He thought that ball was gone. He kind of jogs there a little bit. I don't particularly like that, but then he kicks himself in gear and gets down there.
He's entertained us tonight in the 12-1 game. So this is Ryan Christensen, who replaced Ben Grieven left for his first at bat. Hey, Ray, I want to tell you that it's always a thrill for me to stand and, and work next to one of my heroes. I haven't seen you a lot this year. Yeah, it's a thrill when you announce baseball that you're here, really standing side by side. Oh, I'm sorry, Ray, not you. I mean, Bill King, who has been the voice of Oakland sports for years and years, 20 years with the A's, but he's better known as the voice of the Oakland Rays. All those teams, the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the AFL championships and the Super Bowl. He's a gentleman. Always comes up, says hello. Just to stand, admittedly, next to a black curtain, fittingly black, a silver and black curtain.
Well, he
next to Bill King.
He had his colors on.
Beautiful, beautiful voice. He doesn't know I'm talking about him now, but he's always been kind to me.
I'm in here somewhere.
Always been kind to me. Always. I mean, when he was very established and we were early at ESPN, he was a viewer. And you always remember people like that. And it's easy to be kind to us now, but when you're in 1980, 81, who are we?
Well, it's no
you
different.
gave me a long interview in the early days.
I
anyway,
did.
Bill King's a gentleman. It was good to see him at the game. Here come the A's. Tejada's going to come home. And they throw him out at the plate. Clay Bellinger in left field, and don't tell me he's hurt at the plate. Please no.
But Chris, that goes right back to what we're talking about. Young talent playing over aggressively. Ron Washington stopping him the whole way. You're down 11 runs. Ron Washington right there, down the line. You don't see him. Tried to stop him. He decides to go. The play speaks for itself. No chance, no reason to do that. Just over-aggressive, young talent. But I like it anyway. I like anybody that goes out there and busts their tail day in and day out, and he does. It just takes a little bit of experience.
And that will do it. Baseball tonight is next. Sports Center comes after that with Dan and Stu. Steve Levy is standing by with Harold Reynolds for baseball tonight. So Joe Torre's Yankees have beat the A's 12-1 and have taken the first two in this 3-game set. Tino Martinez with a grand slam, 5 RBIs. Posada homered. Williams homered. Andy Pettitte 13-6. For Ray Knight and all of us at Yankee Stadium, I'm Chris Berman. Thanks for watching Wednesday Night Baseball.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com.